Welcome to Zoon Mind Temple tonight. I'm going to share 10 remarkable Zen stories that have helped millions of people finally silence their racing thoughts and drift into the most peaceful sleep of their lives. Each story contains a hidden key that unlocks your mind's natural ability to let go of stress and worry. And here's what makes this different from ordinary sleep meditation. These teachings work even if you've never meditated before. Even if your mind won't stop racing, even if you've tried everything else. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without in the next 3 hours." Adjust your pillow. Let your body become heavy against the bed. Take one deep breath with me now. And as you exhale, know that you've just taken the first step on a journey that's been waiting for you since the beginning of time. Let's begin with our first story. Let us begin a journey, one about encounters, about the seemingly random yet deeply inevitable threads that quietly weave the tapestry of our lives. This journey begins with a small teacup long ago, nestled among mist-shrouded mountains, stood an ancient Zen temple. Within it lived an old Zen master, his eyes clear, seeming to pierce through all the world's illusions. He had a young disciple, bright and eager to learn, yet bearing the impatience and a touch of barely perceptible carelessness characteristic of youth. The disciple revered his master, serving him meticulously, yearning for his approval and to penetrate the profound mysteries of Zen. On a similarly drizzly afternoon, a traveling monk arrived at the temple from afar. Dusty from the journey, his robes stained with the mud of travel, yet his eyes shone with an unusual brightness, radiating a peace honed by weathering life's storms. When the old master saw him, a rare, heartfelt smile of joy spread across his face. They seemed to be old acquaintances. In the meeting of their gazes, without words, flowed years of sedimented understanding and silent accord. An honored guest has come from afar. We must welcome him with clear tea, the master said gently to his disciple. Go, fetch the old celadon teacup I treasure, the one stored in the plain wooden box, and brew tea for this venerable one. The disciple knew of that cup. His master kept it carefully stored in a simple wooden box, rarely bringing it out. It wasn't from a famous kiln. Its glaze wasn't the purest, and there was even an extremely fine, almost invisible, natural flow line running down its side from the firing. Yet, in the master's eyes, it seemed to hold special significance. Not daring to be negligent, the disciple bowed respectfully, responded with a quick, "Yes, master," and hurried towards the inner chamber. His heart, stirred by the master's solemn instruction and the arrival of this stranger, beat inexplicably faster. He carefully opened the wooden box. The warm celadon color met his gaze. He reached out, his fingertips touching the cool porcelain. Just as he lifted the cup with both hands, turning to head towards the tea room, perhaps too nervous, perhaps, his foot caught slightly on the threshold. Perhaps simply in that instant of pure chance, his hand slipped violently. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The disciple watched in horror, eyes wide with terror, as the cup, bearing his master's sentiment and precious past, escaped his grasp, tracing a brief, despairing arc through the air before crashing crisply onto the hard floor. Crash! The sound of shattering pierced the temple's quiet, like a small hammer shattering the afternoon's peace. The cup instantly fragmented into pieces, shards of celadon scattering across the floor like fallen petals. The once subtle flow line now looked stark and harsh on the largest fragment. The air seemed to freeze. The disciple stood rooted to the spot, face deathly pale, mind blank. Fear and immense guilt flooded him like icy waves, instantly drowning him. He could almost hear the roar of his own blood, feel the cold sweat soaking through the back of his robe. He had messed up, made an irreparable mistake. The master's treasured cup, meant for such an important occasion, destroyed by his hands. He couldn't even imagine the look of disappointment, the reproach in his master's eyes, let less bear to see what the guest, who had traveled so far, would think. Intense shame made him wish he could vanish instantly. He stood rigid, body trembling slightly, awaiting the anticipated thunderous anger, feeling his entire world collapse with that sharp crack. Seconds, then minutes, ticked by. The tea room remained unervingly quiet. Only the sound of rain on bamboo leaves continued, unhurried and steady. Finally, the master's figure appeared in the doorway. His calm gaze swept over the chaotic fragments on the floor, then settled on the ashen-faced, frozen disciple. There was none of the expected rage, no harsh scolding. The master's eyes held not even a trace of visible reproach, only a deep, all-encompassing stillness, just as the disciple, drowning in shame, was about to kneel and beg forgiveness. The master slowly bent down. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, carrying an indescribable composure. He didn't rebuke anyone, didn't lament the broken object. Instead, he extended his hands, weathered by time yet remarkably steady, and began to pick up the shards of porcelain, one by one. He examined each piece with intense care, as if it were not debris, but something worthy of contemplation. His fingertips lightly brushed the sharp edges of the fragments, then smoothed over the glazed surface, lingering especially on the natural flow line, now more pronounced on the shard. His expression was focused and serene, as if performing a sacred task. The traveling monk had come over at some point, standing silently nearby. He watched the master's actions without any trace of surprise or displeasure. Instead, a knowing, even warm, smile touched his lips. He said nothing, merely watched quietly, as if the scene unfolding was precisely the manifestation of Zen he had anticipated. The disciple was utterly bewildered. He stared dumbly at his master, then the smiling monk. Profound confusion replaced his earlier terror. Why isn't master angry? Why isn't the guest offended? This broken cup, wasn't it a disaster? His thoughts were a tangled mess. He couldn't comprehend this unnatural calm. The master placed the last large fragment gently on his palm, looked up, and his gaze met the nearly suffocating disciple's eyes. His voice was low, yet clear as a bell piercing through fog, resonating. In the silent tea room, look at these fragments. Each has its place, its shape. Its breaking was inevitable. Your hand slipping was inevitable. My bending to pick it up now is inevitable. This venerable monk witnessing it all is also inevitable. The master paused, his gaze seeming to penetrate the disciple, and the tea room walls reaching towards the invisible threads in the vast unknown. Child, in this world, there are no accidental shards, only inevitable encounters. This teacup, it's coming to me, was the arising of connection, Yuan Si. Its shattering in your hands today is also the arising of connection. Its purpose, perhaps, was not merely to hold tea, but to bring in this moment, with its broken form, this flash of insight to us three, to this rainy afternoon. The master's words struck the disciple like a gentle yet powerful lightning bolt, shattering the ice of fear and guilt that had frozen his heart. No accidental shards, only inevitable encounters? The cup's breaking was actually a kind of purpose, a kind of arising of connection. He instinctively looked at the largest fragment in the master's palm. The natural flow line, at the fractured edge, caught the candlelight and the fading daylight from outside, refracting a strange luster, as if the wound itself had become a channel for light. It no longer looked harsh, but displayed a unique fragmented beauty. The curved lines remaining on the shard still recalled the warm contours of the cup when it was whole. But master, the disciple murmured, his voice dry, it broke. It can never hold tea again. He still couldn't shake the heavy feeling of destruction. The traveling monk stepped forward lightly. His gaze also rested on the fragment in the master's palm, and with a perceptive calm, He smiled gently. "Young master, look at this fragment. Has it truly broken? It has merely changed form. It was a teacup, perfectly holding clear tea, nourishing hearts. Now it is shattered. This crisp sound, its scattered posture, these sharp edges, are they not speaking to us? In its new language, the truth of impermanence, the essence of connection gathering and scattering? Its present brokenness, is it not another form of manifesting completeness? It fulfilled its mission as a teacup. Now it begins its deeper teaching as a fragment. This shattering sound, this scattered chaos, is its most resonant sermon right now. Are we not all its listeners?" The disciples stared at the monk, dumbfounded. The master's words, the monk's words, washed over his confused thoughts like clear mountain spring water. The world before his eyes seemed to subtly transform. It was no longer mere chaos and error. The scattered fragments, each seemed to be speaking. Their sharp edges reflected the candlelight, casting tiny glimmers. Their irregular shapes formed a strange, unrepeatable pattern on the ground. They had once belonged to a whole, now separate, yet somehow connected, again by an invisible force connecting the master's bent back, the monk's calm gaze, and his own fiercely pounding, then slowly calming heart. The master slowly straightened, placing the fragment in his hand, gently on the low table with the others. He looked at the disciple, his eyes deep as ancient wells. The arising of connection does not point only to beautiful unions. Every separation, every breaking, every seemingly unforeseen accident is a necessary node in this vast web of causes and conditions. Together, they form the river of our lives, shaping our understanding and awakening. Today's breaking may be for tomorrow's reunion and renewal in another form. What matters is not clinging to the teacup's once perfect form, but understanding the inevitability contained within the breaking itself, and the invisible force behind that inevitability, the law of arising connection, the deepest truth of life. The master's voice was low and powerful, each word seeming to carry immense weight, yet landing softly like a feather on the disciple's heart. Remember, child, every person you meet in your life, every event that occurs, is like this teacup's encounter and shattering. Nothing is pure coincidence. They arrive bearing their own causes and conditions. Whether they bring joy, trouble, help, or destruction like this moment, they invisibly push you, shape you, guide you towards where you need to go, towards the understanding you need to grasp. Every brush of shoulders, every glance back, every laugh or tear all are indispensable strokes in the grand painting of a rising connection. Accepting this inevitability, like accepting this broken teacup, is accepting the completeness and flow of life itself. The tea room fell into a long silence once more. Only the candle flame flickered. The rain still rustled softly. The turbulent waves churning in the disciple's chest gradually calmed, replaced by an unprecedented clarity and a weighty understanding. He looked at the fragments on the floor, no longer merely trash. He looked at the master's peaceful face, at the traveling monk's gentle smile. Fear and guilt hadn't completely vanished, but they no longer dominated. They were enveloped by a greater awe for the inevitable and a dawning comprehension of arising connection. The broken teacup was no longer a cursed mistake, to be lamented. It had become a gateway to deeper understanding. In its decisive way, it had revealed to him the essence of encounters and separations in life. The afternoon's mishap, the crisp shattering sound, the scattered chaos, the master's calm, the monk's smile, and the inner storm he had weathered, all were tightly interwoven into a complete, inseparable present moment. All of this, was it truly just chance? The master spoke no more. He picked up the teapot, calmly pouring another cup of tea for the traveling monk, using a plain earthenware cup. The sound of the tea, pouring was clear and soothing. The fragrance of tea rose once more, mingling with the sandalwood, the rain-freshened air, permeating the tea room. Now returned to tranquility. The disciple silently picked up a broom and dustpan and began carefully sweeping up the fragments. His movements were light, slow, no longer panicked, but filled with unprecedented focus and reverence. He gathered every piece, large or small, as he held the dustpan filled with fragments, ready to leave. The master's gaze rested on him once more, with a hint of imperceptible approval. Place them well. Each piece was part of our encounter today. The disciple nodded deeply, holding the fragments as if cradling some precious revelation, and quietly withdrew. The rain had stopped unnoticed. The wet courtyard glistened softly in the twilight. Water droplets hung from the tips of bamboo leaves, occasionally falling with a clear plink. The disciple stood under the eaves, looking down at the fragments in the dustpan. The celadon glaze reflected the faint light, the flow line meandering across the shard. His mind echoed the master's words. No accidental shards, only inevitable encounters. Accepting this inevitability is accepting the completeness and flow of life itself. His heart had never felt so calm, nor so expansive. The sound of breaking still echoed faintly, but it no longer jarred. It had become a lingering, thought-provoking note, merging into the tranquility of the rain-washed mountain temple, merging into the boundless, star-filled sky, pregnant with inevitable encounters. That sound reminded him that every collision, every parting, every seemingly casual crossing of paths was a necessary node in the web of life, silently shaping him, guiding him towards the unknown, yet inevitable depths. High above, the clouds parted, and a bright, full moon silently rose, its pure light spilling down, gently covering the temple roof, the courtyard, and the disciples' hands holding those fragments, bearing profound arising connection. Moonlight like water flowed silently, seeming to silently affirm the master's words. Look, this encounter, this breaking, this understanding, this moonlight, all are in this inevitable web, perfectly aligned. Cool, silvery moonlight that bathed the shattered teacup shards in the courtyard still seems to linger in the air, a gentle afterglow of the profound lesson learned. It flows like liquid mercury, spilling over the eaves of the meditation hall, tracing the contours of the rain-washed bamboo leaves, and pooling softly on the quiet stone path where you now walk, not just in the story, but perhaps in the quiet landscape of your own drifting thoughts. The air feels cleansed, carrying the damp, fertile scent of earth after rain, and a subtle fragrance of night-blooming jasmine from somewhere unseen. Your breathing has settled into an easy rhythm, matching the slow pulse of the night. The tension that might have lingered after the teacup's dramatic fall has dissolved, replaced by a spaciousness within, an openness to the next ripple in this flowing stream of understanding. So, let us continue walking beneath this same moon, along this same path, where another encounter awaits one as fleeting as a dragonfly skimming water, yet potentially as deep as the well of wisdom itself. A young disciple, his heart still, echoing with the master's words about inevitable encounters and the hidden purpose within every shard of existence, found sleep elusive that night. The moonlit courtyard called to him. He slipped out quietly, needing to move, to feel the solid earth beneath his feet, to perhaps outpace the restless energy stirred by the day's revelation. He walked briskly along the familiar path leading down from the monastery, winding through ancient pines whose shadows lay like sleeping giants across the silvered ground. His sandals scuffed softly on the damp stones. His mind, though quieter than before, still churned. Inevitability, purpose, no accidents. The concepts were vast, like the star-strewn sky above, beautiful yet daunting. How could every single person, every single moment, hold such weight? The enormity felt heavy. He quickened his pace, almost as if trying to physically shake off the lingering sense of responsibility the insight carried, the feeling that he must now be hyper-aware of every interaction. He needed to do something, to understand actively, perhaps to prove himself worthy of the master's teaching. The path dipped, following the course of a small, clear stream that chuckled quietly over smooth pebbles. Here, the moonlight danced on the water's surface, fragmented yet shimmering. The disciple stopped near the stream's edge, drawn by its sound. He felt a sudden thirst, not just of the body, but a deeper thirst to grasp, to hold on to the profound truth that had brushed against him. Kneeling, he cupped his hands in the cool water, bringing it to his lips. The water was sweet, refreshing. He splashed a little on his face, the coolness sharpening his senses. Yet the restlessness remained. He stood, ready to resume his hurried pace back up the mountain, his mind already leaping ahead to tomorrow's chores, tomorrow's meditation, tomorrow's attempt to figure it all out. It was then that he noticed the figure. A man sat on a large, moss-covered boulder beside the stream, just a few paces downstream. He hadn't been there a moment ago, or perhaps the disciple, lost in his own whirlwind, simply hadn't seen him. The man wasn't doing anything remarkable. He wasn't meditating in a lotus position, nor was he chanting. He wasn't even looking at the moonlit vista. He was simply sitting. His posture was relaxed, almost languid. One leg was drawn up, his arm resting casually on his knee. He wore simple, worn traveler's clothes, and a wide-brimmed straw hat lay beside him on the rock. His gaze was fixed on the flowing water at his feet, watching it slip past the stones with an expression of deep, unhurried contentment. He looked utterly at peace, completely absorbed in the simple act of observing the stream, as if it were the most fascinating, the most important thing in the world at that very moment. The disciple paused. The contrast between his own inner turbulence and the man's palpable stillness was jarring. It was like seeing a mountain lake perfectly reflecting the sky next to a churning, muddy river. He felt a flicker of self-consciousness, then a spark of curiosity. Who was this man, sitting so serenely alone in the moonlit night? Hesitantly, almost drawn by the magnetic field of the man's calm, the disciple approached. "Good evening, traveler," the disciple called out, his voice sounding a little too loud in the quiet night. The man slowly lifted his head. His face was weathered but kind, etched with lines that spoke of sun and wind and time, yet his eyes were clear and bright, reflecting the moonlight like the stream itself. A warm, unhurried smile spread across his features. "Good evening, young friend," he replied, his voice as smooth and calming as the water flowing beside them. "A fine night for walking or for sitting?" His gaze held the disciple's for a moment, gentle but perceptive, as if he could see the whirlwind inside the young man. "Why, yes, it is," the disciple agreed, shifting his weight. He felt the need to explain himself, this urgency inside him. "I am a disciple from the monastery up the mountain. I couldn't sleep. The thoughts, they chase each other." He gestured vaguely towards his head. The traveler nodded slowly, his smile deepening with understanding, not judgment. "Ah, thoughts, like leaves on the stream, yes? They come, they go, carried by currents we cannot always see." He patted the mossy surface of the boulder beside him. "The rock is still dry. Sit for a moment." The stream has much to say, if one listens without rushing. The invitation was simple, yet it felt like a lifeline thrown to the drowning disciple. He climbed onto the boulder, settling himself a respectful distance from the traveler. He tried to mimic the man's relaxed posture, but his back remained stiff, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He looked down at the water, trying to see what the traveler saw, to hear what he heard. But all he perceived was water flowing, endlessly flowing, seemingly going nowhere and everywhere at once. His mind immediately jumped to the masters. Lesson. Was this meeting inevitable? What is this man's purpose here? What am I supposed to learn? The questions buzzed like persistent insects. The traveler seemed to sense his struggle. He didn't offer profound koans or complex philosophy. Instead, he pointed a weathered finger at a particular spot in the stream. Look there, young friend. See that little eddy? Where the water swirls back on itself for just a moment. The disciple followed his gaze. Indeed, near a submerged root, the water formed a small, lazy whirlpool before rejoining the main current. Yes, I see it. It struggles a bit, doesn't it? The traveler mused softly, trying to hold on, to create its own little world apart from the flow. But the stream is stronger. It always draws it back in. Eventually, even the most persistent eddy surrenders to the greater current. He paused, letting the image sink in. Sometimes, he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, blending with the water's murmur, our thoughts are like that. Eddy. We clutch at them. We worry them. We try to make them stand still or go in circles. We fight the natural flow. The disciple felt a jolt of recognition. Clutching at thoughts. Fighting the flow. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing? Trying to grasp the immensity of the master's teaching. Trying to force understanding. Creating mental eddies of anxiety? But the stream, the traveler went on, his tone soothing. It doesn't try to flow. It doesn't strive to reach the sea. It doesn't fret about the rocks it passes over or the banks that contain it. It simply is flow. It moves because it is water, and water moves. That is its nature. He turned his clear eyes fully on the disciple. Your nature, young friend, beneath the rushing thoughts and the restless feet is peace, is awareness, is being here, like this rock, like this water, like this moon. The words landed softly, but with immense weight. Your nature is peace. Not something to be achieved through frantic effort, but something inherent, obscured, only by the eddies of thought. The disciple felt the tight knot of striving in his chest loosen, just a fraction. He took a deeper breath, tasting the cool night air. He looked again at the stream. He saw the eddy, still swirling, but now he also saw the effortless glide of the main current, the smooth way it parted around stones, the constant, unhurried movement forward. He saw the moonlight dancing on the surface, fragmented yet whole. It feels difficult, the disciple admitted quietly, to stop rushing, to just be. The traveler chuckled softly, a sound like pebbles tumbling in shallow water. Oh, it is. For the mind that loves to chase leaves on the stream, very difficult indeed. But it is not about stopping the rushing. It is about noticing it, about stepping back, like stepping onto this rock and watching the river of your thoughts flow by. You are not the eddy. You are the awareness that sees the eddy. You are the stillness that holds the flow. He leaned forward slightly, his voice warm and intimate. This moment here, with the water song and the moon's blessing, is it not enough? Does it need your worry to complete it? Does it need your hurry to validate it? Questions hung in the air, not demanding an answer, but inviting reflection. The disciple looked around. He truly saw the moonlit pines, their silhouettes stark and beautiful against the starry sky. He heard the intricate melody of the stream, the chirp of a single cricket hidden in the grass. He felt the cool, slightly damp surface of the moss beneath him, the gentle night breeze against his skin. He felt the rise and fall of his own breath, no longer shallow and quick, but deepening, slowing in that moment of simply being present, without trying to grasp or understand or achieve. A profound quiet descended upon him. It wasn't the absence of thought, but a spaciousness around it. Thoughts still drifted through his mind, the master's teacup, inevitable encounters, but they drifted like leaves on the stream, noticed but not clung to. It didn't pull him under. He felt anchored, like the mossy boulder beneath him, grounded in the simple reality of the moonlit night. He turned to thank the traveler, to ask his name, perhaps to invite him back to the monastery, but the boulder beside him was empty. Only the indentation in the moss remained, and the traveler's wide-brimmed straw hat resting there, as if left deliberately. The traveler himself was gone, vanished as silently as he had appeared. There was no sound of retreating footsteps, no figure moving down the path. It was as if the moonlight itself had gently absorbed him. The disciple stared at the empty space, then at the hat. A wave of wonder washed over him, clean and pure. There was no fear, only a deep, resonating awe. He hadn't imagined it. The warmth of the man's presence, the clarity of his words, the profound sense of peace he had instilled, they were real. Yet the traveler's disappearance felt utterly natural, as seamless as the stream flowing around a stone. He picked up the straw hat. It was simple, well-worn, smelling faintly of sun and dust and distant roads. It felt light, yet substantial in his hands. Holding it, the traveler's final words echoed within him with renewed clarity. This moment, is it not enough? Yes, it was enough. More than enough. This fleeting encounter under the ancient pines, beside the singing stream, bathed in moonlight, it was a complete universe in itself. The traveler, whoever he was, a wandering sage, a manifestation of the night's wisdom, or simply a man, at peace, had come precisely when needed. His words weren't complex doctrines. They were simple keys that effortlessly unlocked the cage of the disciple's striving mind. He hadn't taught a new truth. He had pointed directly to the truth the disciple already carried within, the inherent peace beneath the turbulence, the awareness that is always present, watching the stream of thoughts and sensations. The disciple sat for a long time on the mossy boulder, the straw hat resting gently in his lap. He watched the stream flow. He watched the moon trace its slow arc across the sky. He felt the night air on his skin. Thoughts came and went about the traveler, about the master, about the broken cup, about the nature of encounters. But he watched them come and go like leaves on the water. He didn't chase them. He didn't try to hold them. He simply rested in the awareness that held everything: the stream, the moon, the thoughts, the memory of the traveler's kind eyes. The lingering sense of deep, unshakable, calmed out the frantic energy that had driven him down the mountain, had completely dissolved. There was no need to rush back, no need to do anything with this newfound peace. It simply was. It filled him as naturally as moonlight fills a clearing. He understood, in a way deeper than intellectual comprehension, that the traveler was right. His true nature was this peace, this awareness. The rushing, the striving, the grasping, those were just habits, patterns learned by the mind, like the eddy trying to resist the stream's greater flow. He stood up eventually, the movement, fluid and unhurried. He placed the straw hat gently back on the moss where the traveler had sat, a silent offering of gratitude. He didn't need to keep it. The gift the traveler had given him was far more precious and intangible, carried now within his own heart. Back up the mountain path towards the silent monastery, his steps were different. They were measured, grounded. He wasn't running from restlessness. He was walking in peace. He felt the cool stones beneath his sandals, the gentle pull of the incline. He listened to the night sounds, the rustle of a small creature in the undergrowth, the sigh of the wind in the pines, the fading murmur of the stream behind him. Each sensation was vivid, welcomed, part of the tapestry of the moment. He looked up at the monastery, its outlines softened by moonlight. A single lamp glowed softly in the master's window. A profound sense of belonging washed over him, not just to the place, but to this moment, to this life, to the vast, intricate web of encounters, some lasting, some fleeting like the touch of a dragonfly's wing that had brought him here. The traveler on the rock was one such encounter, brief as a sigh, yet its resonance felt eternal. It hadn't answered all his questions about inevitability and purpose. Instead, it had dissolved the frantic need for those answers. It had shown him that the deepest understanding often comes not through frantic seeking, but through quiet presence. Not through grasping the meaning of every encounter, but through fully experiencing the encounter itself. The path of life, he realized as he walked, isn't just about the grand destinations or the dramatic collisions. It is equally paved with these quiet moments of grace, these seemingly insignificant passings by that leave an indelible mark on the soul. The traveler hadn't given him a map. He had reminded him that he was already home, right here, right now, in the awareness that holds the journey. He reached the monastery gate, pausing for a moment to look back down the moonlit path. It lay empty and serene. The mossy boulder by the stream was just a dark shape in the distance. A soft smile touched the disciple's lips. The night held its breath, the world suspended in luminous stillness. The only movement was the slow drift of clouds across the moon's face and the silent, effortless flow of understanding within his own awakened heart. The echo of the traveler's gentle question lingered, merging with the whisper of the pines. Is this moment not enough? And in the deep quiet of his being, the answer resonated, clear and certain. Yes, it is everything. Wondering sense of peace from the moonlit path, the traveler's gentle question, is this moment not enough? Still resonates like a soft chime in the quiet chamber of your awareness. The monastery sleeps, wrapped in a deep, velvety silence only broken by the occasional sigh of wind through ancient eaves. The scent of rain-drenched earth has deepened, mingling now with the faint, sweet aroma of sandalwood incense drifting from the meditation hall. You feel the comforting weight of stillness settling around you, like a well-worn cloak. Your breath flows effortlessly, a quiet tide in the harbor of the night. The disciple's steps, measured and grounded as he returned from his encounter, echo softly within you. That sense of being home within awareness, not needing to chase or grasp, it's a spacious harbor. Now, let us step quietly into the monastery's inner courtyard, where the cool moonlight paints intricate silver patterns on the warm flagstones. Here, another layer of understanding awaits, not under the open sky, but reflected in a surface both ancient and intimate. The disciple entered the main hall, the heavy wooden door closing behind him with a soft, final thud that echoed in the vast, shadowed space. The single lamp in the master's chamber cast a warm, inviting rectangle of light onto the hallway's polished wood floor. He felt calm, centered, yet profoundly touched by the strangeness and depth of the night's encounter. He moved towards his own small cell, intending to finally rest, but the master's door slid open silently. The old monk stood framed in the doorway, not with an air of waiting, but simply being. His eyes, deep pools of calm in the lamplight, held the disciple's gaze. There was no question, no demand for an account. He simply nodded, a slight, knowing curve touching his lips, as if the moonlight itself had whispered the disciple's journey to him. Then, without a word, he turned back into his room. It wasn't a dismissal, but an unspoken invitation. The disciple followed. The master's room was spare, almost austere. A low writing desk, a worn meditation cushion, a simple wooden shelf holding a few scrolls, and a small, unadorned shrine with a single candle flame dancing before a serene Buddha figure. On the desk lay an object that immediately drew the disciple's eye. It was a mirror, not a common polished bronze disc, but something far older, more enigmatic. The frame was dark, ancient wood, intricately carved with swirling patterns. that seemed to shift in the flickering light, reminiscent of water currents or twisting vines. The reflective surface wasn't perfectly smooth. It had a subtle, almost liquid depth, like a still pool held within the wood. It seemed to absorb the lamplight rather than merely reflect it, holding the glow deep within its substance. The master stood before the desk, holding a piece of incredibly soft, undyed silk, with movements of profound gentleness and reverence. He was polishing the surface of the ancient mirror, not vigorously, but with infinite care, long, slow strokes that seemed less about cleaning and more about honoring the surface, coaxing its inner light to the fore. The disciple stood silently, near the doorway, watching. The master's complete absorption in this simple task was mesmerizing. There was no hurry, no distraction, only the rhythmic whisper of silt against the mysterious glass, the soft hiss of the candle flame, and the deep, quiet presence of the old monk himself. After several long minutes, the master paused. He didn't look up, but his voice, low and resonant, filled the quiet room. "Come closer, child. Look." The disciple approached, his earlier tranquility mingling with a spark of curiosity. He stood beside the master, gazing at the mirror's surface. At first, he saw only the reflection of the candle flame, dancing like a captured star in the mirror's depths. Then, as his eyes adjusted to the subtle play of light, he saw more. He saw the reflection of the master's serene profile, the lines on his face softened by the glow. He saw the corner of the wooden shelf, the edge of a scroll, and he saw himself, his own face looking back, framed by the dark, swirling wood. The reflection was strangely vivid, yet softened, as if seen through a thin veil of water or early morning mist. There was a depth to it that ordinary mirrors lacked. It felt less like a surface image and more like a glimpse into another layer of reality. "It is very old," the master murmured, his fingers tracing the edge of the carved wood without touching the reflective surface. "Passed down through many hands, many eyes. They say it doesn't merely show the face, but reflects the quality of the gaze." "The quality?" the disciple asked, his voice hushed. The master nodded slowly. "Look again. Not at your reflection, but into it. What do you see? Not just features, but the landscape behind the eyes." The disciple leaned in slightly, his brow furrowing as he tried to follow the master's guidance. He looked past the shape of his nose, the curve of his jaw, and tried to see what lay behind his own eyes in the reflection. He saw tiredness, the residue of the night's earlier turmoil. He saw the lingering wonder from the encounter with the traveler. He saw a flicker of, what was it? Impatience? A subtle frustration that he wasn't immediately seeing what the master seemed to imply was there. He saw the earnest desire to understand, to get it right. As he focused on this subtle frustration within his own reflection, something peculiar happened. The surface of the mirror seemed to ripple faintly, like a pond disturbed by a pebble. The edges of his reflection softened, blurred slightly, and superimposed over his own face. Subtly at first, then more distinctly, he saw another face. It was the face of Brother Liang, the monastery's cook. Brother Liang was a large, slow-moving man with a perpetually flushed face and a methodical, almost ponderous way of doing everything. The disciple often found himself feeling a subtle irritation towards Liang. His slowness in the bustling kitchen, his deliberate way of speaking, his apparent lack of urgency, they grated on the disciple's own natural quickness, his desire for efficiency. Now Liang's round, calm face seemed to hover within the mirror, merged with his own. The disciple saw Liang's patient eyes looking back at him, and in them he suddenly saw not slowness, but a deep, unshakable steadiness. He saw not inefficiency, but a meticulous care. And reflecting back from Liang's gaze, he saw his own impatience, his own restless energy, not as virtues, but as a kind of skittishness, a lack of rooted calm. The disciple blinked, startled. He pulled back slightly. The image of Brother Lang faded, leaving only his own slightly confused reflection. "What?" he began, but the master raised the hand gently, silencing him. "Look again," the master instructed, his voice a soft command. "See who else appears." Hesitantly, the disciple leaned in once more. He tried to calm his mind, to let go of the surprise. He focused on his reflection, trying to see beyond the surface. This time, as he gazed, a different feeling surfaced. A small, hard kernel of resentment he hadn't fully acknowledged. It was directed towards an older disciple, Brother Wen. Wen was brilliant, quick-witted, effortlessly mastering texts and koans that left others struggling. He had a sharp tongue and a way of making the younger disciple feel clumsy and slow. The disciple admired Wen's intellect, but often felt diminished, even belittled in his presence. As this feeling of resentment surfaced in his awareness, the mirror's surface shimmered again. Brother Wen's sharp, intelligent features seemed to materialize within his own reflection. He saw Wen's keen eyes, the confident set of his mouth. But this time, instead of seeing only intimidating brilliance, the disciple saw something else reflected in Wen's gaze. A deep loneliness, a hunger for recognition that manifested as cutting superiority. And looking back from Wen's eyes, he saw his own insecurity, his own craving for validation, his own fear of inadequacy mirrored starkly. The resentment he felt towards Wen suddenly felt less like Wen's fault and more like a reaction to his own internal fears being exposed. Soft gasp escaped the disciple's lips. He felt exposed, vulnerable. The mirror wasn't just showing him others. It was showing him himself through the lens of his judgments and reactions. It was revealing the unacknowledged landscapes within him that colored how he perceived the world. The master's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, a grounding presence. "Do you understand, child?" the master asked, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying immense weight. "This mirror, they say, has a peculiar quality. It reveals not just the face of the one who looks, but also the faces of those who dwell in the heart of the gazer. More importantly, it shows the smudge through which the gazer views the world." "Smudge?" the disciple echoed, his voice thick with emotion. "The smudge," the master confirmed, his gaze fixed on the mirror's depths. "The prejudice, the unexamined hurt, the hidden pride, the clinging desire, the unacknowledged fear. These are the smudges on the lens of our perception. When we look at another and feel irritation, envy, resentment, or even blind admiration," the master paused, letting the words sink into the silence. "Often, it is not the other we truly see. It is our own reflection. We see the parts of ourselves we have disowned, or hidden, or fear, projected outward onto their form." He gestured towards the mirror with a faint afterimage of Brother Wen seemed to linger. "Your frustration with Brother Liang's pace, is it truly about his slowness? Or is it a reflection of your own impatience with yourself? Your own struggle to accept the natural rhythm of things? Your resentment towards Brother Wen's sharpness, is it truly about his words? Or is it the mirror showing you your own insecurity, your own unvoiced need to be seen as worthy?" The disciple felt the truth of the words strike him with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't accusatory. It was illuminating, like sunlight piercing deep forest gloom. He thought of countless moments, a frown directed at someone's clumsiness. Was he not clumsy in his own impatience? A pang of jealousy at another's ease. Did he not crave such ease? A quick judgment of someone's motives. How often were his own motives truly pure? The faces in the mirror, Liang Wen, they hadn't been mere illusions. They were mirrors held up to his own inner state. The other, the master continued, his voice a low, resonant hum in the quiet room. becomes a canvas upon which we paint our own unresolved landscapes. We see not them, but the shape of our own inner weather reflected back. Their perceived faults are often our own unhealed wounds, projected outward for us to confront or to flee from. The disciple looked down, his cheeks burning with a mixture of shame and profound revelation. He had judged, criticized, felt superior or inferior, all the while believing he was seeing them. But the ancient mirror revealed a harsher, yet ultimately liberating truth. He had been seeing himself, distorted by the smudges on his own perception. "How?" the disciple stammered, looking up at the master, his eyes wide with a plea for guidance. "How do I clean the smudge?" The master smiled, a gentle, compassionate curve of lips. He picked up the piece of soft silk again. "The cleaning cloth is always in your hand, child," he said softly. "It is awareness. It is honest self-reflection. It is the courage to look within when irritation or judgment arises and ask, what in me is reacting? What old wound is this touching? What fear is this reflecting?" He demonstrated, not on the mirror, but in the air, a slow, gentle wiping motion. You do not clean it by attacking the smudge, by forcing it away. You clean it by bringing the light of awareness to it, by acknowledging its presence without judgment. "Ah, here is my impatience. Here is my insecurity. Here is my fear." Just seeing it, naming it gently, without adding fuel to it, this is the silk that polishes. He placed the silk down beside the mirror. The mirror itself is inherently clear. Your true nature, the awareness that observes the smudges, is inherently pure, unstained. The smudges are transient, like dust on a window pane. They cloud the view, but they do not change the fundamental clarity of the glass behind them, nor the light that seeks to shine through. The disciple looked back at the mirror. His own face gazed back, but now he saw it differently. He saw the tiredness, the wonder, the remnants of shame, the dawning understanding, but he also saw, beneath it all, the observer, the one who saw the tiredness, the wonder, the shame. That observer felt calm, clear, untouched by the passing weather of his emotions. That was the clear glass. That was the inherent purity the master spoke of. He took a deep, shuddering breath, then let it out slowly. He felt raw, exposed, but also strangely lighter. A burden he hadn't fully known he was carrying, the burden of projecting his inner turmoil onto others, began to dissolve. "The people who challenge us," the master said, his voice filled with a deep warmth, "who irritate us, who awaken strong reactions within us, they are not our enemies. They are our most profound teachers. They are the mirrors held up by life itself, showing us the smudges we need to polish. They arrive not by accident, but because our soul cries out for clarity. Embrace them as such. Look deeply into the reflection they offer, not to blame them, but to understand the landscape within yourself that their presence reveals." The disciple nodded, the movement slow and full of newfound reverence. He looked at the ancient mirror, no longer with curiosity tinged with unease, but with gratitude. It was a sacred tool, a silent teacher. "Thank you, Master," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The master simply nodded, his eyes holding infinite understanding. He gestured towards the door. "Rest now. Let the reflection settle." The disciple bowed deeply, the movement imbued with a new depth of respect, not just for the master, but for the profound teaching he had received. He turned and walked softly towards the door. As he reached the threshold, he paused and glanced back at the mirror one last time. The candle, flame still danced within its depths. The master's serene reflection was there, and his own face, the lines of tension had softened. The confusion had given way to a quiet, watchful stillness. The smudges hadn't vanished, But he saw them now. He saw the impatience as a ripple on the surface of his deeper calm. He saw the insecurity as a passing cloud in the vast sky of his awareness. And beneath it all, the clear glass of his true nature shone through, reflecting the unwavering candle flame, the master's presence, the quiet truth of the teaching. He saw, not a face clouded by judgment, but a landscape beginning to be known, accepted and gently tended. The mirror had shown him others, yes, but only to lead him unerringly back to himself. The greatest encounter, the most inevitable meeting of all, was the meeting with the hidden territories of his own heart. He stepped out into the moonlit courtyard. The air was cool, fresh. He looked up at the stars, countless points of light. In the vast darkness, he thought of Brother Lang moving slowly in the kitchen at dawn, of Brother Wen debating texts with sharp intelligence. No irritation rose. Instead, a wave of compassion washed over him. Compassion for Liang's steadfastness, compassion for Wen's hidden loneliness, and most importantly, compassion for his own journey, for the smudges he carried and was learning. To Polish Dot, he was not separate from them. They were mirrors, and he was a mirror. They were all reflecting the same fundamental light, obscured only by the unique patterns of dust gathered on their individual surfaces. The task wasn't to clean the other mirrors. It was to tend to his own with the soft silk of awareness. Firefly blinked near a cluster of ferns by the veranda, a tiny, pulsing emerald light. The disciple watched it, his heart open and quiet. The mirror's lesson wasn't harsh. It was a liberation. To know that the judgment he cast outward began within. This was the key to true connection, to dissolving the illusion of separation. The faces in the mirror, Liang, Wen, the traveler, the master, himself, they were all facets of the same luminous whole, each reflecting back the others, each an inevitable teacher on the path to wholeness. He walked towards his cell, his, steps light upon the moon-silvered stones. The ancient mirror's reflection lingered within him, not as an image, but as a deep knowing. Every person he met, every reaction he felt, was an invitation to look within, to polish the lens, and to see, finally, the pristine clarity that had been there all along. The mirror hadn't shown him flaws. It had shown him his path to freedom. And in that freedom, the whole world became clearer, kinder, more intimately connected. The only smudge had ever been the belief that the smudge was out there, on someone else's mirror. The night embraced him, cool and silent. High above, the moon, that eternal mirror in the sky, cast its pure, unblemished light upon the sleeping world. The disciple understood. The polishing had begun. The clarity left by the ancient mirror's reflection, the understanding that every perceived flaw in another is an invitation to polish our own lens. This awareness settles within you like the first pure light of dawn filtering through. The monastery's paper screens, the deep night has softened, giving way to the gentle grays and pinks of early morning. A single resonant bell tolls in the distance, its deep note vibrating through the stillness, calling monks to the first. Meditation, yet here, in the quiet cocoon of your rest, it feels like a reminder of inner awakening. The air holds a crisp freshness, scented with dew-kissed grass, damp earth, and the faint, clean aroma of green tea being brewed somewhere nearby. Your body feels relaxed, almost weightless, cradled in stillness. The disciple's sense of lightness, his newfound compassion for himself and others, resonates within your own quiet space. The polishing has begun. Now, let us step softly from the introspective chamber into the awakening monastery garden, where life, in all its diverse forms, offers another layer of understanding under the burgeoning light of a new day. Following the bell's call, the disciple made his way towards the meditation hall, but a subtle impulse drew him instead towards the monastery's walled garden. It was a sanctuary within a sanctuary, a place where the master often spent the quiet hours of dawn, tending to plants with the same mindful attention he gave to polishing the ancient mirror. The garden wasn't grand or meticulously manicured in the imperial style. It was a harmonious tangle of textures and life. Tall, slender bamboos whispered secrets to each other in the morning breeze. Sturdy pines offered deep green shade in one corner. Flowering shrubs spilled over paths of raked gravel and moss-covered stepping stones. Herbs grew in neat, fragrant patches near a small, still reflecting pond where water lily floated like serene faces. Every leaf, every stone, every ripple on the pond seemed imbued with quiet presence. As the disciple entered through the simple wooden gate, he saw the master already there. He wasn't seated in meditation, but kneeling beside a bed of chrysanthemums, their buds just beginning to hint at the vibrant colors within. The master held a small, sharp knife. With movements of astonishing precision and gentleness, he was carefully removing tiny, withered leaves and spent buds from the base of the plants. It wasn't pruning for show, but a tender act of removal, clearing space for the new growth pushing upwards towards the light. The disciple paused, watching. The master's focus was absolute, his breathing slow and even. Each cut was deliberate, considered, as if he were engaging in a silent dialogue with the plant itself. The discarded bits fell into a small basket beside him, not as waste, but as offerings returned to the cycle of earth. The disciple felt a familiar pang, the desire to do, to help, to be useful. He approached quietly, bowed, and asked, "Master, may I assist you?" The master looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners in a warm, silent welcome. He didn't speak, but simply handed the disciple a pair of worn, comfortable gardening shears and gestured towards a cluster of overgrown sagebush nearby. Their silver-green leaves were lush but crowded, some stems tangling and blocking light from reaching the inner growth. The message was clear: tend here. Grateful for the task, the disciple knelt beside the sage. He began to trim, mimicking the master's careful attention. At first, his movements were hesitant, overly cautious. He worried about cutting too much or not enough. He thought about the mirror, about his tendency to rush, to judge. He consciously slowed his breathing, his hands. He focused on the feel of the stems beneath his fingers, the clean snick of the shears, the sharp, invigorating scent of sage released into the cool air. He tried to see the plant not just as a task, but as a living presence. Which stems were strong and vital? Which were weak, spindly, or crowding others? Which leaves were vibrant, and which were yellowing, ready to let go? As he worked, a profound sense of calm descended. The act of mindful tending, clearing space, removing what no longer served, allowing light and air to reach the heart of the plant, felt like an extension of the polishing he had begun within himself. He wasn't forcing the sage to be something else. He was simply helping it express its own inherent vitality by removing the obstacles. The garden, he realized, wasn't separate from the mind. Tending one was tending the other. The sun climbed higher, casting long golden shafts of light through the bamboo. The garden awoke fully. Bees hummed around lavender spikes. A butterfly, its wings like stained glass, fluttered past. The disciple, absorbed in his task, felt a deep sense of belonging, of being part of this quiet, vibrant ecosystem. It was then that the first visitor arrived. Old Man Feng, the village gardener who sometimes came to exchange seeds and wisdom with the master, pushed open the garden gate. He carried a basket of young lettuce seedlings, their roots wrapped in damp cloth. Feng was a man of few words, his face as weathered and lined as the bark of an ancient plum tree, his hands permanently stained with earth. He nodded respectfully to the master and gave the disciple a brief, acknowledging glance. Without ceremony, He knelt beside an empty patch of prepared soil near the disciple and began to work. Feng's movements were economical, effortless, born of a lifetime spent coaxing life from the earth. He dug small, precise holes with a trowel, gently loosened the roots of each lettuce seedling, settled them into the earth, and firmed the soil around them with a practiced touch. He worked steadily, silently, completely absorbed in the rhythm of planting. He didn't offer advice or commentary. His presence itself was his offering. The disciple watched him from the corner of his eye. There was a deep humility in Feng's work, a quiet reverence for the simple act of placing a seedling into the ground, trusting it to grow. It was a different kind of tending than the master's precise pruning or his own deliberate clearing. It was the nurturing of potential, the act of grounding new life. Feng's silent, earthy presence was like a balm. It didn't demand interaction. It simply was, and in its being, it offered a profound lesson. Nourishment often comes not through grand gestures or profound words, but through the steady, humble acts of grounding, planting, and providing sustenance. Feng was tending the garden's body, its physical need to grow and be fed. His contribution was fundamental, grounding. The disciple felt his own roots settling deeper into the earth as he watched Feng work. Not long after, the gate creaked again. This time, it was Lin Mei, a woman from the nearby town known for her poetry. She often came to the garden seeking inspiration, her presence as light and airy as a dragonfly's wing. She carried no tools, only a small notebook and a charcoal pencil. She greeted the master with a soft smile and a slight bow, her eyes already scanning the garden, drinking in the play of light on the pond, the intricate pattern of dew on a spider's web, the vibrant contrast of orange marigolds against deep green foliage. She found a spot on a smooth, sun-warmed stone near the reflecting pond and sat, utterly still, her gaze fixed on the water lily. Lin Mei didn't tend the plants physically. She didn't weed or water. She simply sat, observing with an intensity that was almost palpable. She watched the way a single drop of water rolled off a lily pad, the slow unfurling of a new bud, the intricate dance of light and shadow on the gravel path. Occasionally, her hand would move, charcoal whispering across the paper in her notebook. She was tending the garden's soul, capturing its essence, its transient beauty, its silent poetry. Her presence brought a different quality and appreciation of the garden's aesthetic spirit, its capacity to inspire wonder and reflection. She reminded the disciple that nourishment isn't only physical. It's also the sustenance found in beauty, in stillness, in the deep observation that transforms the ordinary into the sacred. Her quiet absorption was a form of reverence. A different kind of watering. The disciple continued trimming the sage, aware now of the different energies in the garden, the master's precise, clearing wisdom, old man Feng's humble, grounding nurture, Lin Mei's appreciative, soulful observation. Each presence contributed uniquely, yet harmoniously, to the garden's life. Then, laughter, bright and clear as a bell, shattered the morning quiet. A small figure darted through the gate. Xiao Lan, the 6-year-old daughter of the monastery's cook. Her cheeks were rosy, her eyes wide with excitement. She carried a small, slightly lopsided daisy she had picked outside the wall. She ran straight towards the master, holding out the flower like a precious treasure. "Look, grandfather monk. Look what I found. It's smiling," she exclaimed, her voice full of unbridled joy. The master paused his pruning, his stern countenance melting into genuine warmth. He took the offered daisy with great seriousness, holding it gently. "Ah, a smiling flower," he said, his voice soft with amusement. "A rare and precious gift. Thank you, little Lan." Zhao Lan beamed. She didn't kneel to tend or sit to observe. She explored. She crouched to watch an ant carrying a crumb 10 times its size. She gently touched the velvety petal of a pansy. She skipped along the stepping stones, humming a tuneless little song. She saw not just plants, but worlds. The ant was a mighty hero. The pansy was a princess. The stone path was a winding river. Her presence was pure, unfiltered being. She didn't contribute to the garden's maintenance. She simply delighted in it, her joy and wonder radiating outwards like sunshine. She watered the garden with laughter and innocence, reminding everyone present of the sheer, uncomplicated joy of existence, the wonder inherent in simply being alive amidst growing things. The disciple watched her, a soft smile touching his lips. Zhao Lan's presence was like a splash of pure color on a serene canvas. She wasn't trying to do anything useful. She was just being Zhao Lan in the garden. And in that being, she brought a unique kind of life and vibrancy. She reminded him of his own inherent nature before the layers of striving and judgment accumulated the simple joy of being present. The master resumed his pruning. Old Man Feng continued planting his lettuces. Lin Mei remained absorbed in her observation, and Zhao Lan danced between them like a cheerful sprite. The garden thrived under their collective, unspoken care. The disciple looked around, truly seeing the scene. It wasn't just a collection of individuals in a garden. It was an ecosystem of nourishment. The master, with his discerning cuts, represented the wisdom that clears away the unnecessary, the obstructive, the deadwood, allowing essential vitality to flourish. He tended the garden's clarity. That Old Man Feng, with his earthy hands and quiet planting, represented the fundamental nurture, the grounding, the provision of sustenance. He tended the garden's body. Lin Mei, with her deep seeing and capturing of beauty, represented the appreciation, the inspiration, the feeding of the soul through aesthetic wonder. She tended the garden's spirit. Xiao Lan, with her unfettered joy and wonder, represented the pure essence of being, the life force itself, expressed in delight and presence. She tended the garden's heart. None of them did the same thing. None of their contributions looked alike. Yet each was vital. Each presence nourished the garden and nourished everyone else present in a unique and irreplaceable way. The garden wasn't just plants. It was the space where these different forms of tending intersected, creating a whole far greater than the sum of its parts. The disciple looked down at his own hands, holding the shears beside the sage bush. He understood now. His tending the careful clearing was also part of this nourishing ecosystem. He wasn't separate from Old Man Feng's planting, Lin Mei's seeing, or Zhao Lan's being. They were all different expressions of the same life force interacting with the garden, each playing their part. And just like the garden, his own life was nourished by diverse souls. There were those who offered grounding wisdom and practical care, like Feng. There were those who inspired him with their vision and depth, like Lin Mei. There were those who brought pure joy and reminded him of simple presence, like Zhao Lan. And there were those, like the master, who helped him prune his own inner tangles. No single person provided all the nourishment. It was the rich tapestry of different encounters, different energies, different forms of tending that sustained his growth. The people who entered his life weren't random visitors. They were each a unique kind of gardener, arriving to tend a specific aspect of his inner landscape at a specific time. Some planted seeds of strength. Others helped clear weeds of doubt. Some watered his spirit with beauty. Others simply shone the light of their presence, helping him remember his own joy. Their roles might change. The poet might one day offer practical help. The child might one day share wisdom. But each interaction, each encounter, however brief or long-lasting, however seemingly significant or insignificant, was a form of tending. He felt a wave of deep gratitude wash over him, warm and expansive. Gratitude for the master's guidance, for Feng's humble work, for Lin Mei's quiet intensity, for Zhao Lan's bubbling joy. Gratitude even for the challenging ones, the brother Langs and brother Wens, who tended his inner garden by showing him where he needed to polish his own lens. They were all gardeners in the vast, interconnected field of being. He finished trimming the sagebush. The plant looked lighter, airier, its healthy inner stems now visible, basking in the morning sun. He placed the shears down gently. Zhao Lan ran up to him, holding out a small, perfect pebble she had found. "Look, it's a moonstone," she declared. He took the smooth, cool pebble, holding it with the same reverence the master had held her daisy. "It's beautiful, little Lan," he said softly, meeting her bright, trusting eyes. "Thank you for sharing your moonstone." Her laughter rang out again, pure and clear, mingling with the hum of bees and the rustle of leaves. The master looked up from his chrysanthemums, his gaze encompassing the disciple, the child, the gardener, the poet, the thriving garden. A profound peace, deeper than silence, radiated from him. It was the peace of wholeness, of seeing the perfect, nourishing dance of diverse lives intersecting in the sacred space of the present moment. The disciple pocketed the smooth pebble, a tangible reminder. He understood now that he, too, was a gardener, not just of plants, but of presence. His own being, his own attention, his own unique way of interacting, was a form of tending offered to the world around him. And the world, in all its diverse expressions, was constantly tending him back. The garden wasn't outside. It was within and all around, a living field of mutual nourishment, where every soul, in its own inevitable way, helped every other soul to grow. The only task was to show up, tend with awareness, and receive the countless, unique forms of grace offered by the fellow gardeners walking this path beside him, under the same wide, nourishing sky. The morning sun, now fully above the monastery walls, bathed the garden in golden light. It touched the newly planted lettuces, the pruned chrysanthemums, the observed water lily, the dancing child, and the disciple standing amidst it all, his heart wide open to the intricate, beautiful, inevitable tending of life itself. The vibrant tapestry of the garden, the master's precise cuts, old man Feng's grounding hands, Lin Mei's observant stillness, Zhao Lan's bubbling joy still lingers like the warmth of the morning sun on your skin. That sense of being part of a vast, nourishing ecosystem, where every soul is both gardener and garden, settles within you, deep and quiet. The air in your own space feels soft now, perhaps carrying the imagined scent of damp earth and sun-warmed stone. Your breath flows easily, a gentle current matching the rhythm of the story. The disciple, carrying Shaolan's smooth moonstone in his pocket, steps away from the walled sanctuary, carrying that profound understanding of interconnected tending. Now, let the scene shift. Feel the coolness rise, the light soften towards dusk. Hear the sound, not of bees or laughter, but of water constant, flowing, ancient. We leave the contained garden and step onto the bank of the mountain river, where a different kind of teaching awaits, whispered not by people, but by the current itself. The disciple found himself drawn to the river more often in the days that followed. The garden's lesson of diverse nourishment had opened his heart, yet a new restlessness, subtler than before, began to stir. It wasn't the frantic energy of striving, but a quiet yearning, a sense of standing at a threshold. Life within the monastery walls felt rich, yet the wider world, hinted at by the traveler on the rock, and the path winding down the mountain, called with an undeniable pull. He felt like a leaf trembling on a branch, sensing the inevitability of the fall, the journey downstream. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped towards the western peaks, painting the sky in hues of apricot and lavender, he walked down the familiar path to the stream where he had met the traveler. But today, he followed it further downstream, where the stream widened and deepened, joining the larger mountain river. The sound changed from a playful chuckle to a deeper, more resonant murmur, a powerful hum that vibrated through the stones and the air itself. He stood on a broad, flat rock, jutting out over the rushing water, feeling the cool spray on his face. The river was a living force, powerful, relentless, carving its path through ancient rock with patient, undeniable strength. It didn't argue with the boulders. It flowed around them, over them, sometimes wearing them down over centuries. It accepted the tributaries that joined it without question, their waters merging seamlessly into the greater flow. He sat down on the sun-warmed rock, taking the smooth pebble from his pocket. He turned it over in his fingers, its surface cool and comforting. Like a tiny river stone, he thought, worn smooth by currents I cannot see. He watched the river, mesmerized by its complexity. On the surface, it was a churning chaos of white, foam and swirling eddies where currents collided. But beneath the surface turmoil, he sensed a profound, unwavering direction, a deep, powerful pull towards the distant sea. It was purposeful, yet utterly surrendered. It didn't decide to flow. It was flow. As he watched, he noticed two distinct currents merging just upstream from his rock. One was clearer, swifter, cascading down directly from a steep, rocky cleft. High on the mountainside, it was energetic, almost impatient, full of youthful vigor. The other was slower, darker, richer, flowing from a broader valley where it had meandered through forests and meadows, gathering sediment and depth along its way. They approached the confluence from different angles, different histories. For a moment, just before they met, they seemed to hesitate, their waters creating a visible line of tension, a ridge of conflicting energy. Turbulence churned at the meeting. Point-white water frothed, conflicting currents pulled in different directions. Small whirlpools spun erratically. It looked like struggle, confusion. The disciple leaned forward, captivated. Which current would dominate? Would the swift stream cut through the deeper one? Would the slow, heavy current overwhelm the bright, quick flow? But the river had its own wisdom. The struggle was momentary, superficial. Gradually, inevitably, the distinct currents began to blend. The clear, swift water didn't vanish. Its energy infused the deeper flow, adding sparkle and movement. The dark, slow water didn't disappear. It lent its depth and substance, calming the swift stream's frantic edge. They didn't fight for supremacy. They interpenetrated. They swirled together, their colors mingling, their energies harmonizing. Within a few yards downstream of the confluence, the turbulence subsided. What emerged was a single, stronger, more complex current, clearer than the slow stream alone, deeper than the swift stream alone. It moved with a new kind of power, a serene confidence born of integration. It was no longer swift stream or slow stream. It was simply the river, enriched and transformed by their meeting. The disciple sat very still, the lesson washing over him like the river's spray. This is how encounters happen, he realized, the pebble warm in his poem. This is how people flow into our lives. He thought of the traveler on the rock, a swift, clear stream of insight meeting the turbulent eddies of his own striving mind. There had been a moment of tension, of unfamiliarity, a disruption of his solitary flow. But the traveler's clarity hadn't sought to erase his confusion. It had blended with it, creating a new depth of understanding. The confusion hadn't vanished. It had been transformed, integrated. He thought of Brother Wen, a sharp, potentially cutting current, meeting his own current of insecurity. The collision had been turbulent, painful. But was that turbulence not necessary? Hadn't it churned up the sediment of his own fears and inadequacies, forcing them to the surface where the mirror of awareness could reveal them? The encounter, however difficult, was part of the blending, part of making him a deeper, more self-aware. Current dot, he thought of Old Man Feng and Lin Mai and Zhao Lan in the garden, different energies, different streams, flowing into the space of his awareness. Their meeting hadn't been a battle for dominance. It had been a natural confluence, each contributing their unique essence to the nourishing whole. Feng's earthy slowness hadn't rushed Lin Mei's observation. Zhao Lan's joy hadn't disrupted the master's pruning. They had flowed together, creating something richer. The river didn't cling to its individual tributaries. It didn't mourn the loss of their separate identities as they merged. It embraced the confluence as a natural, necessary part of its journey towards the sea. It understood that every meeting, every confluence, whether harmonious or turbulent, was an opportunity for growth, for deepening, for becoming more wholly itself. A question arose, quiet but persistent. Do I flow like the river? He examined the currents of his own life. When someone new entered his awareness, someone with different ideas, different energies, different ways of being, did he meet them with the river's open acceptance? Or did he, like the streams at the point of confluence, create a ridge of resistance? Did he fear the turbulence of blending, the loss of his familiar, separate course? Did he try to dominate the other current, or shrink away from it, rather than allowing the natural, transformative interpenetration? He saw moments where he had resisted clinging to his own viewpoint, judging the other stream as wrong or threatening, fearing the change their confluence might bring. He saw the friction this created, the wasted energy of resistance. But he also saw moments, like with the traveler, where he had relaxed into the meeting, allowing the other's current to mingle with his own, trusting the greater flow. The result had been peace, expansion, a new depth. The master's voice, remembered from a teaching long ago, echoed in his mind. The rigid branch breaks. The supple bamboo bends with the wind and survives the storm. The river was the ultimate embodiment of suppleness. It didn't resist. It responded. It yielded to the shape of the land, yet its yielding was not weakness. It was the power of persistence, the strength of adaptation. It embraced every obstacle, every confluence, as part of its path, trusting the inherent intelligence of the flow. The disciple looked down at the merged current flowing powerfully past his rock. It carried leaves, twigs, bubbles of air fleeting, things that rode its surface. It didn't cling to them. It allowed them to journey with it for a while, then released them when the current shifted or they caught on the bank. It held them lightly. Ah, he breathed. That too, not only the meeting of currents, but the releasing. The river didn't grasp. People, circumstances, experiences, they flowed into his life, journeyed alongside him for a time, shaping his course, adding their unique essence to his current. But inevitably, the currents shifted. Paths diverged. Some companions flowed away down different channels. Some experiences, like the shattered teacup, were transformed beyond recognition. Hold them all lightly, like the river held the passing leaves? Could he appreciate their presence, their contribution to his depth and strength, without demanding they remain forever fixed in his flow? Could he trust that their departure, too, was part of the river's wisdom, making space for new confluences, new transformations? He thought of the traveler vanishing into the moonlight, leaving only the straw hat. That release hadn't diminished the gift. It had made it pure, timeless. He thought of the master's words about the teacup's brokenness being part of its inevitable purpose. Release wasn't loss. It was transformation. Making way for the next bend in the river, the sun dipped below the peaks, casting long, cool shadows across the river. The water, reflecting the twilight sky, turned deep, mysterious, indigo, flecked with the last glints of gold. The river's song seemed deeper, more resonant in the gathering dusk. The disciple placed the smooth pebble back into his pocket, a talisman of integration. He stood up on the rock, feeling the immense power of the flowing water beneath him. He didn't feel small. He felt part of something vast, ancient, and intelligent. He was a current within the great river. His encounters weren't accidents. They were confluences, necessary meetings that shaped his journey, deepened his flow, and propelled him towards the ocean of understanding that his task wasn't to control the river, but to flow with it. To meet each confluence, each person, each experience with openness, allowing the natural blending, the inevitable transformation. To hold each companion, each lesson, with gratitude and lightness, trusting the river's wisdom to carry them, and him exactly where they needed to go. To embrace the turbulence as part of the journey, knowing it smoothed rough edges and revealed hidden depths. To surrender the illusion of separateness and isolation, he stepped off the rock onto the bank. The path back to the monastery lay upstream against the current. He paused, looking back at the river, now a silvery ribbon in the twilight. He smiled. The river didn't flow backwards. His journey, like the rivers, was onward, towards integration, towards the sea. The monastery was a vital eddy, a place of deep nourishment and reflection, but not his final destination. He was part of a greater flow. He turned and began walking. Back, not with resistance, but with a new sense of purpose. He walked with the land, not against it, feeling the contours of the path beneath his feet. He carried the river's song within him, a constant reminder of surrender, of confluence, of the beautiful, inevitable journey shared with countless other streams, all flowing in their own time and way towards the same boundless ocean. The ripples of every encounter, he understood, spread outwards, touching shores he would never see, part of a current far greater than himself. His only task was to flow clearly, deeply, openly, one confluence at a time. The first stars pricked through the twilight canopy above. Below, the river murmured its eternal truth, a lullaby of surrender and belonging. The disciple walked on, his steps in rhythm with the flowing water, his heart open to the next inevitable meeting, the next necessary bend. The river's deep murmur, its song of surrender and ceaseless journeying towards the boundless sea, still hums within you, a low, comforting vibration beneath the surface of your awareness. The cool twilight air of the riverbank seems to linger, carrying the scent of whetstone and distant pine. But feel the subtle shift. The air grows crisper, drier, touched by a new quality, the faint, smoky perfume of change, of transformation. The deep greens of summer are yielding, softening at the edges, touched here and there with the first hesitant flares of gold and crimson. The disciple's steps, walking with the land, carrying the river's wisdom, lead us now into the monastery's heart as the wheel of the year turns. The vibrant garden prepares for slumber, and the trees begin their ancient, silent ritual of release. Let us step into the monastery courtyard under a high, clear autumn sky, where falling leaves whisper the next layer of understanding, softer than the river song, yet just as profound. The disciple had returned from the river with a quiet resolve, a deeper acceptance of life's confluences and releases. Yet, as the days shortened and the air sharpened, a different kind of stirring arose within him. It wasn't restlessness, but a quiet melancholy, a bittersweet awareness of impermanence, made vivid by the changing world. The vibrant chrysanthemums the master had pruned were now in full glorious bloom, defiant bursts of color against the fading greens. But it was the ancient maple tree in the center of the courtyard that commanded attention. Its leaves, once a uniform canopy of deep green, were now a breathtaking tapestry of fire, scarlet, gold, amber, and rust, blazing against the piercing blue of the autumn sky. One bright, cool morning, the disciple found the master seated on a worn stone bench. Beneath the maple, he wasn't meditating, nor was he reading. He was simply gazing upwards, watching the leaves. A few already lay scattered like jewels on the mossy cobblestones around him, early harbingers of the great release to come. The disciple approached, quietly, bowing, and sat beside him. Together, they looked up into the radiant canopy. Sunlight filtered through the colored leaves, casting dappled patterns of warm light on their robes and the ground. The air was utterly still, holding its breath. Then, a single perfect golden leaf, its edges tipped with crimson, detached itself from a high-branched dot. It didn't plummet. It danced, caught by an invisible breath of air. It spun, twirled, floated, and swayed in a slow, graceful descent. It seemed to hesitate, to savor the space between branch and earth. It turned this way and that, catching the sunlight, a tiny, luminous kite without a string. The disciple watched, mesmerized, holding his own breath as the leaf pirouetted downwards. It took an achingly long time, this journey of a few feet. Finally, with infinite gentleness, it settled onto the moss-covered stones at the master's feet, coming to rest as lightly as a butterfly. The master didn't pick it up. He simply gazed at it, his expression one of deep tenderness and acceptance. The disciple felt a lump form in his throat. The leaf's dance was so beautiful, so free, yet its final resting place felt so final, a symbol of life now stilled. The melancholy within him swelled. "It's beautiful," the disciple whispered, his voice thick with unspoken sadness. "But it's over. It has fallen." The master turned his calm eyes towards the disciple. There was no sadness in them, only a profound, peaceful knowing. "Has it?" he asked softly, his voice like dry leaves rustling. "Look closely, child." The disciple looked down at the leaf. It lay perfect, radiant, its intricate veins a map of its life, the sunlight warming its vibrant colors. It was beautiful, but it was no longer part of the tree. It was separate, adrift. "The tree lets go," the disciple said, the melancholy deepening. "It must be painful to release something so vital, so much a part of itself." The master nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the canopy above. Letting go is part of its nature, just as holding on was in the spring and summer. Does the tree weep for each leaf? The disciple thought. The tree stood tall, its branches reaching towards the sky, seemingly unmoved, even as more leaves began their slow, silent spirals downward. "It doesn't seem to," he admitted. "The tree understands," the master said gently. "It understands that the letting go is not an end, but a transformation. A reunion." Reunion? The disciple was confused. The leaf lay on the cold stones, separate from the tree, beginning its journey towards decay. How was that reunion? The master leaned forward slightly, his finger tracing the air above the fallen leaf without touching it. "Where did this leaf come from?" "From the tree," the disciple answered. "And what is the tree made of?" The master pressed, his voice patient. "Wood, branches, roots, and the earth?" The master prompted. "The water, the sunlight, the air." Understanding began to dawn, slow and subtle, like the changing light. "The tree draws its life from the earth, the water, the sun, the air," the disciple murmured. "Yes," the master affirmed. "The leaf, too, is made of earth, water, sun, and air. It was formed by the tree, yes, but its essence was always borrowed from the world. Now," he gestured to the leaf resting on the moss, "it returns. It feeds the moss, the insects, the soil itself. The nutrients from its form will seep back into the earth, be drawn up again by the tree's roots, perhaps becoming part of a new leaf, a new branch, next spring." He paused, letting the disciple absorb this. Another leaf, this one a deep scarlet, detached and began its slow, graceful descent. "The leaf doesn't cease to be," the master continued, his voice a soft counterpoint. to the silent dance above. It changes form. It returns to the source from which it and the tree and you and I all sprang. It becomes rain. It becomes soil. It becomes the breath of another creature. It becomes the strength of the tree for the next cycle. The falling is not a departure. It is a homecoming. It is a reunion with the very fabric of being that sustains all life. He looked directly at the disciple, his eyes holding the depth of autumn skies. So it is with all things, child. So it is with relationships, with experiences, with phases of life. We hold, we cherish, we grow attached as the tree holds its leaves through summer's fullness. But the season of holding inevitably gives way to the season of release. And that release is not a failure, not a loss to be mourned, but a necessary, sacred return. The disciple thought of people who had flowed out of his life, family members past, childhood friends grown distant, the traveler vanished into moonlight. He thought of phases of his own life, innocent childhood, the fervor of early practice, now gone. He had often felt their absence as a hollow space, a source of grief. But the Master's words reframed it. Were they truly gone? Or were they, like the leaf returning to the source, their essence woven back into the tapestry of his being, shaping who he was now? Had the love of his parents not become the foundation of his compassion? Had the traveler's wisdom not become part of his inner calm? The pain we feel, the Master said softly, as if reading his thoughts, is the pain of the tree momentarily feeling the separation. The attachment to the form, the specific leaf, the specific person, the specific time. But beneath that pain, if we listen, is the deeper truth. Nothing is truly lost. Nothing is truly separate. The letting go is an act of trust in the greater cycle, trust in the reunion that exists beyond form. We release the leaf, knowing it is returning home, knowing its journey enriches the whole. Gestured towards the fallen golden leaf. Honor the beauty of its dance. Grieve the loss of its specific presence on the branch, if you must, but do not mistake the falling for an ending. See it for what it truly is, a transformation, unnecessary. Step in the endless dance of giving and receiving, of form and formlessness, of holding and releasing. The leaf's journey back to the earth is as vital, as sacred, as its time gracing the branch. The disciple looked again at the scarlet leaf finally settling onto the moss beside the golden one. He no longer saw just death or separation. He saw a completion, a fulfillment, a silent, graceful surrender to a deeper belonging. He saw the tree, strong and patient, releasing its children back to the universe with trust. He thought of his own attachments to outcomes, to people staying forever unchanged, to his own self-image. He saw how clinging caused suffering, like a tree refusing to release its dead leaves, stifling new growth. The Master's lesson wasn't about cold detachment. It was about love so vast it included release. It was about understanding that true connection transcends form. The bond wasn't broken by the leaf falling. It was transformed, expanded to include the entire cycle. Master, the disciple asked, his voice clearer now, the melancholy softened by understanding. How do we release? How do we let go without the sharp edge of grief? The Master smiled, a gentle curve like a crescent moon. By practicing like the tree, by feeling the season change within you, by honoring the beauty of what was without demanding it remain as it was, by trusting the root that connects you to all life, the source that never fails. He placed a hand lightly on his own chest. When grief arises, do not push it away. Let it fall like the leaf. Observe it. Honor it as the natural response to love, to connection. But beneath the grief, feel the root. Feel the connection that death cannot sever, the connection of shared essence, of borrowed earth and water, and light. Feel how the one you released, the experience you mourn, is still part of you, part of the air you breathe, the ground you walk on. They have returned to the source, and the source is always present, always holding you. He looked up as a small cascade of leaves, loosened by a passing breeze, fluttered down around them like a shower of warm jewels. Release is not forgetting. It is loving in a different way. It is holding the memory, the essence, the lesson within your heart, while releasing your grasp on the form that has served its time. It is making space, like the tree makes space for winter's rest and spring's renewal. It is trusting that the love, the connection, the shared essence that remains, that is eternal. That is the true reunion. The disciple sat in silence, watching the leaves fall. Each descent was unique, a tiny masterpiece of movement and light. He no longer felt only sadness. He felt awe. He felt reverence for the courage of the release, for the profound trust it implied. He felt the deep, unbreakable root within himself, connecting him to the earth, to the sky, to the tree, to the fallen leaves, to the master beside him, to everyone he had ever loved and released. They were all part of the same flowing substance, the same eternal cycle. He picked up the golden leaf that had first fallen. It was cool, papery thin, yet strong in its intricate vein structure. He held it gently, not clinging, simply honoring its journey, its beauty, its inevitable return to the source. He felt no urge to preserve it, to trap its form. Its beauty was in its transience, in its participation in the great dance of giving and receiving. He placed it back on the moss, beside the scarlet one. "Thank you," he whispered, to the leaf, to the tree, to the cycle itself. The master nodded, a deep peace radiating from him. Together, they sat under the shower of falling leaves, witnesses to the quiet, magnificent sacrament of release. The disciple understood now that every goodbye, every ending, every necessary letting go, was not a severing, but a different kind of embrace. It was the leaf trusting the wind, the tree trusting the earth, the heart trusting the invisible root that binds all life. It was the beginning of a deeper reunion, whispered on the crisp autumn air, written in the language of falling leaves. Let go and know you are held. Release and know you are never apart. The journey continues, always towards the source, towards home. The courtyard, filled with the soft, rustling music of release. The disciple closed his eyes, feeling the sun's warmth on his face, the cool air, the silent cascade of transformation around him. He breathed in the scent of change, of earth, of eternity. And in his heart, where grief had tinged the edges of his love, a new space opened, a space of quiet trust, of boundless connection, of peaceful surrender to the beautiful, inevitable fall. Scent of fallen leaves, the silent music of surrender under the autumn maple, still lingers like wood smoke on the cool evening air within your awareness. That profound sense of release as sacred return, of letting go as an act of deep trust in the eternal root. It has settled into your bones, a quiet warmth against the gathering dusk. The monastery courtyard, strewn with jewels of crimson and gold, fades gently. Feel the temperature drop further now, a palpable chill seeping into the imagined stones. The high, clear autumn sky deepens into twilight, then into a velvety, moonless night. Stars emerge, cold and brilliant, but their light feels distant, unable to pierce the thick canopy of ancient pines crowding a narrow mountain path. The air is utterly still, heavy with the scent of pine resin and damp earth, and beneath it, a whisper of something else. Fear, disorientation, the deep, resonant bell of understanding momentarily muffled. The disciple, carrying the lesson of the leaf, steps beyond the monastery's comforting walls and into a darkness far deeper than night. Here, another kind of meeting awaits, not in sunlight or moonlight, but in the shared, fragile glow of human light in the consuming dark. The call had come at dusk, a breathless villager stumbling up the mountain path. An elderly hermit, a friend of the masters who lived in a cave high on the opposite ridge, had fallen gravely ill. He needed medicine, comfort, perhaps the last rites. The journey was treacherous, even by daylight. A steep, winding path through dense forest, crossing a narrow, slippery gorge on a rope bridge, then a scramble up loose scree. By night, without moonlight, it was considered foolhardy. Yet the master's gaze, when it settled on the disciple, held no question, only a quiet command born of necessity and compassion. "Go," the master had said, his voice low but carrying the weight of the mountains. "Take the lantern. Move with care, but move with purpose. Your steps are needed." He handed the disciple a sturdy, hooded lantern, its metal frame cool, its reservoir full of oil. "Remember the route, child. Even in the deepest dark." The disciple's heart hammered against his ribs. The trust placed in him warred with a rising tide of primal fear. The path beyond the monastery gate looked like a gaping maw. But the image of the hermit, alone and suffering in the high dark, steeled him. He lit the lantern's wick. A small, warm circle of light pushed back the immediate darkness, revealing the first few uneven stones of the path. It felt pitifully small against the vast, hungry night. He took a deep breath, tasting the cold, pine-scented air and his own apprehension, and stepped forward. The forest closed around him instantly. The lantern's light became a fragile island in an ocean of black. Trees loomed like silent giants, their branches weaving a roof that blotted out the stars. Every rustle in the undergrowth, a mouse, a falling pinnacone sounded magnified, threatening. Shadows danced at the edge of the light, twisting into grotesque shapes. The path, familiar by day, became a treacherous puzzle of roots, rocks, and sudden drops. His progress was agonizingly slow. Each step required intense concentration, testing the ground before committing his weight. The lantern held low to illuminate his feet. The circle of light felt like his entire world, a tiny bubble of precarious safety in an indifferent, potentially hostile void. The lessons of the river, the leaf, the mirror, they felt distant, theoretical, drowned out by the pounding of his own blood and the oppressive silence. He reached the gorge. Even in daylight, the rope bridge was daunting, a few weathered planks, strung across a chasm where a mountain stream roared far below. Invisible now in the darkness, its sound a constant, chilling growl. The lantern light barely reached the other side, swallowed by the blackness. The bridge swayed faintly in the cold updraft. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at his throat. "I can't. It's impossible." The hermit's face, imagined in suffering, flashed in his mind. The master's trust. He gripped the lantern handle until his knuckles turned white. One step, just one step onto the bridge. He forced his foot onto the first plank. It creaked ominously. The bridge swayed more noticeably. He froze, paralyzed. The roar of the unseen stream below seemed to mock his fear. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. His small circle of light trembled on the weathered wood, revealing nothing beyond the next few precarious steps. Despair, colder than the mountain air, began to seep into his bones. He was utterly alone. The vastness of the mountain night, the indifference of the abyss below, the sheer fragility of his own light and life. It was overwhelming. The lantern's glow, which had felt like a shield moments before, now felt like a beacon highlighting his vulnerability, his insignificance in the face of the immense, uncaring dark. He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to turn back, tears of frustration and fear pricking at his lids. Then, through the pounding of his own heart and the river's roar, he heard it. A sound, Not an animal, not the wind. A voice, faint, strained, calling out from the darkness ahead on the far side of the gorge. "Hello? Is someone there?" The voice was male, laced with exhaustion and a fear that mirrored his own. It came from the path leading up to the hermit's cave. Hope, sharp and sudden, pierced the disciple's despair. He wasn't alone. He cupped his hands around his mouth, his voice cracking as he shouted back, "Yes, I'm here, on the bridge." Who's there?" A pause. Then the voice again, closer now, edged with desperate relief. "Thank the heavens I'm lost." Completely turned around. "My lantern, it went out. I can't see a thing." Another traveler. Another soul adrift in the same suffocating dark. The disciple understood instantly. This man had likely been heading down from the hermit's cave, perhaps after delivering supplies earlier, and gotten lost when his light failed. Now they were both trapped by the gorge, separated by the abyss and the darkness. "Stay where you are." The disciple called, his own fear momentarily eclipsed by the urgency to reach this fellow lost soul. "I have light. I'm coming across." The declaration gave him a surge of resolve he hadn't felt moments before. His purpose shifted, crystallized. It wasn't just about reaching the hermit anymore. It was about reaching this man, sharing the light that had felt so inadequate moments ago. He focused the lantern beam forward, illuminating the next plank. He took a step, then another, forcing himself not to look down into the roaring blackness, focusing only on the small circle of light and the voice calling to him from the other side. "Can you see my light?" He shouted, his voice steadier now. Yes, I see it. A tiny point, like a star." "Keep coming, please." The voice was a lifeline, pulling him forward. Each creak of the bridge, each treacherous sway, was met not with paralyzing fear, but with the determination to close the distance to that voice. His light was no longer just for himself. It was a signal, a promise, a lifeline thrown across the void. By painstaking step, the circle of light advanced. He could hear the other man's ragged breathing now, sense his presence just beyond the reach of his lantern beam on the far side of the bridge. Finally, his foot found solid ground on the opposite ledge. Relief washed over him, so potent it made his knees weak. He staggered forward a few steps, turning to shine the lantern back along the bridge he'd just crossed, a path that now seemed impossible. And there, just beyond the circle of his light, huddled against a large boulder, was the other traveler. A middle-aged man, his face pale and strained in the dim glow, his clothes rough and practical, his eyes wide with residual terror and dawning hope. He held the cold, dead shell of his own lantern. The disciple hurried towards him, holding his own lantern high. The small circle of light expanded to encompass them both. The man flinched slightly as the light reached him. Then his shoulders slumped in profound relief. He looked up at the disciple, his eyes glistening. You have no idea," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. The dark, it was like being swallowed whole. "I thought He couldn't finish. "I know," the disciple said softly, his own voice rough. "I felt it too." "On the bridge," he shuddered, the memory still raw. The man nodded, understanding, passing between them without words. They stood for a moment in the shared circle of light, the tiny island of warmth and visibility in the vast, cold dark. The disciple's lantern, which had felt so insignificant alone, now felt powerful, vital. It wasn't the amount of light. It was the sharing of it. It was the connection forged in the mutual recognition of vulnerability and the shared need for illumination. "We need to get to the hermit," the disciple said, breaking the silence. "He's ill." The man's expression shifted to concern. "Old Master Lin? Ill?" "I brought him supplies just yesterday. He seemed frail, but he shook his head. The path up from here, it's tricky, even by day. But he looked at the disciple's lantern, then at his own extinguished one. Together with your light, perhaps? Yes, the disciple said firmly. Together, the disciple led the way, his lantern held steady. The other man walked close beside him, his presence a solid comfort. The light, while still small, now illuminated a wider path. They could warn each other of roots, point out loose stones. They moved with a shared caution, but also a shared strength that hadn't existed when they were alone. The disciple focused. The beam ahead. The man, familiar with this last leg of the path from his visit the day before, guided with low murmurs. Step left here. The ground is loose, or there's a low branch ahead. Their progress, while still slow, felt sure, less desperate. The darkness still pressed close, but it no longer felt like an engulfing monster. It was simply the absence of light, held at bay by their combined effort. They talked little, saving breath for the climb, but the silence was companionable now, filled with the shared rhythm of their steps and the soft hiss of the lantern flame. The disciple realized his own fear had receded, replaced by a focused determination and a profound sense of connection. This stranger, moments ago a voice in the dark, was now an essential part of his journey. His light was their light, finally. After what felt like hours, they saw a faint, flickering glow ahead, a lamp burning in the hermit's cave mouth. Relief, warm and sweet, washed over them both. They scrambled the last few yards, emerging from the oppressive forest canopy into a small clearing before the cave. The old hermit, Master Lin, lay on a simple pallet just inside the cave entrance. His face gaunt, but his eyes bright and aware in the lamplight. A small fire burned in a pit nearby, its warmth a stark contrast to the night's chill. Master Lin's eyes widened as he saw the two figures emerge from the dark, illuminated by the single lantern. "Chun?" he rasped, recognizing the villager. Then his gaze shifted to the disciple. "And a young monk? How?" Chun, the villager, stepped forward quickly. "Master Lin, thank goodness. This young brother, he found me. I was lost, my light, gone out down by the gorge. He crossed the bridge, shared his light, his voice choked with emotion. The disciple bowed low. Venerable Master, my master sent me. He heard you were ill. I have medicine." He fumbled in his robe for the small pouch. Master Lin looked from one to the other, his thin face breaking into a weak but radiant smile. "Lost and found," he murmured, a lantern shared in the deepest dark. His gaze settled on the disciple's lantern, still burning steadily. "You brought more than medicine, young friend. You brought the light that finds the lost." The disciple knelt beside the old hermit, administering the medicine with Chun's help. As he worked, the events of the night replayed in his mind. The paralyzing fear on the bridge, the voice in the dark, the surge of purpose when he realized his light could save another, the tangible strength found in shared vulnerability, in shared purpose. Chun hadn't just been someone to rescue. He had become the reason the disciple found the courage to cross the bridge. Chun's need had illuminated the disciple's own strength. Later, as Chun stoked the fire and the medicine began to ease the hermit's discomfort, the disciple sat back, looking out at the night from the cave mouth. The darkness was still absolute beyond the firelight and his lantern, but it no longer held terror. He saw Chun's profile in the firelight, his face relaxed now in relief and exhaustion. He saw Master Lin sleeping peacefully. He understood. The lanterns in the dark night weren't just physical lights. They were the people who appear when we are most lost, most afraid, most convinced of our isolation. They are the ones who share their light, their courage, their presence, their hope when our own has flickered out. And in that sharing, Both lights burn brighter. The light isn't diminished by sharing. It is amplified. The hermit's cave wasn't just a destination. It was a sanctuary created by shared light. He hadn't reached it alone. He had reached it because of the voice in the dark, because of Chun's need, because of the shared journey. The challenge of the gorge, the consuming darkness, they hadn't been obstacles to overcome alone, but the very crucible that forged the connection that made the journey possible. Master Lin's words echoed. You brought the light that finds the lost. But it was Chun's voice, lost in the dark, that had truly found him, pulling him back from the brink of despair. They had found each other. They had been each other's light. The disciple looked at his lantern, its flame steady and warm. He thought of the master sending him out with this small light into the vast dark. It hadn't been a guarantee of safety, but an offering of possibility. The possibility of being light for another, and of allowing another to be light for you. The deepest darkness, he realized, is not the absence of stars, but the ink of true isolation. And the smallest shared light can dispel it. The fire crackled. Chun sighed in his sleep. Master Lin breathed softly. High above, unseen behind the clouds, the vast river of stars flowed on. But here, in this small cave on the mountainside, a different kind of constellation glowed, the interconnected lights of human presence, shared vulnerability and mutual aid, burning brightly against the night, a testament to the profound truth. We are never truly alone in the dark. We are each other's lanterns. Hold your light steady and be ready to find and be found. When the night is deepest, the disciple closed his eyes, not in fear, but in gratitude. The cold mountain air carried the scent of pine smoke and shared humanity. The darkness outside was no longer a threat, but a vast canvas upon which the fragile, enduring beauty of shared light was written. One courageous step, one answered call at a time. The memory of shared light in the suffocating mountain dark, the warmth of the hermit's fire, the profound relief of voices finding each other across an abyss. These echoes slowly fade, like embers settling after a blaze. They leave behind a different kind of warmth, a deep, quiet gratitude that permeates your awareness, as gentle and pervasive as the first rays of dawn after a storm. The imagined chill of the night retreats, replaced by a soft, enveloping stillness. The air feels cleansed, carrying the cool, mineral scent of rain that fell softly while the lanterns burned in the high cave. It's the quiet hour just after dawn, when the monastery seems to hold its breath, wrapped in a hush deeper than sleep. The frantic pulse of the rescue mission has stilled. Now, we step into a space of profound quiet, into the master's simple tea room. The door is slid open to reveal a small, enclosed garden, still glistening with raindrops. Here, another kind of encounter awaits one, woven not with shouts or shared peril, but with silence, presence, and the language of steam rising from ancient porcelain. The disciple had returned from the mountain with Chun as the first gray light seeped into the eastern sky. Master Lin, thanks to the medicine and care, was resting more comfortably. The disciple had reported briefly to his own master, the words tumbling out the darkness, the fear, the voice, the bridge, the shared light, the relief at the cave. The old monk had listened intently, his face impassive, but his eyes holding a deep, knowing light. He had simply nodded, placed a hand briefly on the disciple's shoulder, a touch that conveyed more than words, and said, "Rest now. You have journeyed far in one night." Exhaustion, bone deep and sweet, had claimed the disciple. He slept dreamlessly. The terrors of the dark dissolved in the simple safety of his cell. When he awoke, the sun was high, casting warm squares of light onto the polished wood floor. The monastery was quiet, humming with its usual mid-morning rhythm of chores and meditation. Yet, a different quality hung in the air, a sense of aftermath, of integration. He felt changed, quieter inside, the frantic energy of the past days, replaced by a settled calm. The shared light in the darkness felt less like an event and more like a fundamental truth etched onto his soul. He was performing a simple task, sweeping the already spotless walkway outside the meditation hall, when he noticed an unusual stillness around the master's quarters. The usual comings and goings had ceased. Then he saw him. An old man, older even than the master, stood at the entrance to the small garden adjoining the master's tea room. He was frail, leaning heavily on a polished walking stick, his back slightly stooped, his hair a wispy white cloud around a deeply lined, serene face. His robes were simple, worn with time, but exuded an aura of immense dignity and quiet power. The disciple didn't recognize him, but the way the master emerged from his room to greet the old man spoke volumes. It wasn't the formal bow of teacher to student, nor the warm welcome for a villager. It was the deep, wordless reverence reserved for an equal, a peer, a friend whose history stretched back through decades. The master didn't speak. He simply stepped forward, placed his hands gently over the old man's hands where they rested on the walking stick, and bowed his head slightly, his forehead almost touching the older man's knuckles. The old man raised his free hand, trembling slightly, and rested it on the master's bowed head for a moment. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The air between them vibrated with a history, a shared understanding, a depth of affection that transcended language. It was a greeting distilled to its purest essence, recognition, respect, and silent joy at reunion. The disciple stood frozen, the broom forgotten in his hands. He felt like an intruder on a sacred moment, yet couldn't look away. The unspoken communication was more eloquent than any speech. The master straightened, his face softer than the disciple had ever seen it, lit with a quiet, inner radiance. He gestured towards the open door of the tea room. The old man nodded slowly, a smile touching his thin lips. Together, with the master offering a subtle, supportive presence without seeming to help, they moved into the tea room and slid the garden door closed behind them. Curiosity, a gentle pull, drew the disciple closer. He knew he shouldn't eavesdrop, but he felt compelled to witness, if only from a distance, the nature of this profound connection. He found a spot near a pillar where a gap in the screen allowed a sliver of view into the tea room, partially obscured by the branches of a potted bonsai pine. The room was small, spare, bathed in the soft, diffused light filtering through the paper screens. The master was already moving with a grace that seemed both effortless and deeply ritualized. He wasn't preparing tea for a guest. He was engaging in a shared ceremony with a friend. He knelt before the low hearth, where a small, efficient iron kettle sat nestled in glowing coals, already emitting a thin wisp of steam. The old man settled himself slowly, carefully, onto a cushion opposite, placing his walking stick beside him with deliberate care. The disciple expected conversation questions about health, reminiscences, discussions of Dharma. But none came. The silence wasn't empty. It was thick, rich, and alive. It felt like a presence itself. The master lifted the kettle just as the water reached the perfect stage, before a rolling boil, when the bubbles were like shrimp eyes, breaking the surface. He poured the hot water into a simple, unglazed earthenware teapot, warming it, then discarded the water into a bowl. He measured out dark, twisted leaves of aged oolong from a small celadon jar, their aroma, even from a distance, rich and earthy, like damp forest floor and roasted chestnuts, filling the quiet room. He added the water, closed the pot, and waited. His movements were economical, precise, yet devoid of hurry. Every gesture, the way his fingers cradled the pot, the angle of his wrist as he poured the rinse water, the placement of the lid, was imbued with a lifetime of practice, yet felt utterly spontaneous, flowing from a deep well of shared understanding. He wasn't performing. He was being with the tea, with his friend, within the silence. The old man watched, not passively, but with total absorption. His faded eyes followed the master's hands, the steam rising from the pot, the play of light on the warm wood of the tea tray. His expression was one of profound peace and deep appreciation. He didn't fidget, didn't glance away. His entire being was focused on the ritual unfolding before him, radiating a quiet contentment that filled the small space. The master poured the first infusion into two small, handleless cups, simple, deep brown jian ware, their surfaces matte and inviting. He placed one cup before the old man, the other before himself. Still, not a word. They lifted their cups simultaneously, as if guided by an invisible thread. They held them, feeling the warmth, inhaling the complex aroma rising with the steam. They sipped, slowly, eyes closed for a moment, savoring. The disciple could almost taste the silence, a silence that held the rich, roasted flavor of the tea, the warmth of the cup, the decades of shared history, the unspoken affection. It was a communion deeper than any conversation could achieve. The ritual continued, infusion after infusion, the master adjusting steeping times, pouring with unwavering attention. The old man receiving each cup with the same quiet reverence, sipping, savoring, his eyes often meeting the master's across the low table. When their gazes locked, the disciple saw it a flicker of pure, wordless understanding. A shared memory, perhaps? A mutual appreciation of the tea's character in this particular infusion? An acknowledgement of the simple joy of being present. Together? It was impossible to tell, but the connection was palpable, electric in its stillness. A smile, subtle and profound, would sometimes touch the lips of one, then the other, mirrored without a sound. The disciple watched, spellbound. He thought of his own interactions, the need to fill silences, to explain, to articulate thoughts and feelings. He thought of the shared words on the mountain path with Chun, necessary then, anchoring them in their shared ordeal. But this was different. This was a language beyond words. This was understanding distilled to its purest form. Shared presence, shared attention, shared appreciation of a single unfolding moment. He saw how the master anticipated the old man's needs without being asked. When the cup was empty, the master refilled it before the old man could even glance at the pot. When the old man shifted slightly on his cushion, the master subtly adjusted the position of a small backrest. It wasn't servitude, it was attunement. It was the silent dance of deep familiarity and respect. The tea's aroma evolved from the mauve, initial roasted depth to floral hints, then to a clean mineral sweetness as the leaves opened fully. The light in the room shifted as the sun moved. Raindrops clinging to the garden leaves outside the screen sparkled like diamonds. The only sounds were the soft hiss of steam from the kettle, the gentle clink of porcelain on wood, the faint sigh of the old man's breath, the distant call of a dove. The disciple realized he was holding his own breath. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was liberating. It stripped away the need for performance, for interpretation, for translation. It allowed the essence of the moment, the essence of the relationship, to simply be. It was a testament to a bond so strong, so deeply woven, that words could only obscure its purity. Many infusions, when the tea leaves had given their all, yielding only pale liquor, the master set the pot down. He didn't ask if the old man wanted more. He simply knew. He placed a small bowl of fresh, cool water and a clean cloth on the tray. The old man dipped his fingertips into the water, dried them on the cloth, a tiny shared ritual of completion. The master then did something unexpected. He reached not for more tea, but for a plain wooden box. Opening it, he revealed not more. tea leaves, but a single perfect persimmon, its skin a deep, glowing orange, like captured autumn sunlight. He took a small, sharp knife and began to peel it with the same meticulous care he used for pruning chrysanthemums or polishing the ancient mirror. The peel came away in a single, unbroken spiral, revealing the glistening, honey-colored flesh beneath. He cut the fruit into small, even slices and arranged them on a simple plate. He placed a slice on a small dish and offered it to the old man. The old man accepted it. He didn't eat it immediately. He held it, looking at the master, his eyes shining, with an emotion that needed no name. He raised the slice slightly, a silent toast. The master mirrored the gesture with his own slice. They ate then, the sweet, rich flavor of the ripe fruit filling the silence. A perfect, wordless culmination. The disciple understood. The tea ceremony wasn't just about the tea. It was about the shared space, the shared attention, the silent conversation flowing beneath the surface of words. The persimmon wasn't just a fruit. It was a shared taste of the season, a silent acknowledgement of life's sweetness, offered and received in perfect understanding. The old man slowly, carefully, pushed himself up using his walking stick. The master rose smoothly, offering no physical help this time, but his presence was a steady anchor. They stood facing each other for a long moment. Again, no farewell words. The master placed his hands once more over the old man's hands on the walking stick, bowed his head. The old man touched the master's head. The same profound silence, rich with unspoken affection and mutual respect, enveloped them. Then, the old man turned and walked slowly, steadily, out of the tea room and into the sunlit garden, his figure soon disappearing down the path towards the monastery gate. The master stood in the doorway, watching him go, his face serene, suffused with a quiet joy. The disciple finally exhaled, a sound loud in his own ears after the profound silence he had witnessed. He felt humbled, expanded. He had just witnessed a masterclass in connection that used no syllabus, no spoken teachings. It was Dharma in motion, expressed in steam, in porcelain, in shared silence, in a slice of ripe fruit. He understood now that words, for all their power, are sometimes clumsy tools. They can clarify, but they can also obscure. They can connect, but they can also create separation through misunderstanding or artifice. The deepest understanding, the most profound bonds, often reside in the silent spaces between words. They are woven from shared presence, from mutual attention, from the unspoken language of gesture, gaze, and simply being together within the flow of a shared experience. The master slid the garden door closed. The tea room was empty now, holding only the lingering aroma of tea and persimmon and the palpable residue of deep silent communion. The disciple picked up his broom again, but his sweeping was different now. It was slower, more mindful. He listened to the silence of the monastery, not as an absence, but as a presence. He heard the dove call again, the drip of water from the eaves, the rustle of a monk's robe in the distance. He felt the warmth of the sun on his back. He realized the shared light on the mountain wasn't just about lanterns. It was about this too, the silent light of understanding that passes between souls who need no words. The old man and the master were lanterns for each other, their shared history and silent presence illuminating a depth of connection that words could never fully capture. And in witnessing it, the disciple felt his own inner landscape illuminated by a new, quiet light, the understanding that sometimes the most profound things are not said, but silently shared, steeped in presence and savored in the sacred space of wordless communion. The silence remained, not as emptiness, but as a warm, encompassing embrace, a testament to the bonds that speak loudest when they say nothing at all. Profound silence of the tea room, thick with unspoken understanding, and the lingering ghosts of tea steen and ripe persimmon settles around you like the softest silk. It's a silence that doesn't stifle, but opens a spacious quiet where the heart's whispers become clear. The air in your own space feels hushed, perhaps carrying the faint, clean scent of rain-washed stone from the monastery courtyard outside the tea room screens. The disciple's sense of awe, witnessing that wordless communion between masters, resonates within your stillness. That language beyond words, it echoes. Now feel the subtle shift. The diffuse light filtering through paper screens brightens, sharpens. It's later the same day, or perhaps the next time feels fluid in this state of quiet integration. The gentle drip from the eaves has ceased. A crispness enters the air, the first faint, clean bite of approaching winter, carrying the scent of dry leaves and distant wood smoke. We step out of the tea room's intimate silence and into the monastery's main courtyard, swept clean of autumn's jeweled cascade, where a solitary figure moves slowly, leaning on polished wood, tracing a path worn smooth by centuries of contemplation. Here, an echo awaits not of words, but of gratitude, rippling through time. The disciple was returning from the storehouse, arms laden with neatly folded spare meditation cushions, when he saw the old man again. Master Jin, he had learned that the visitor's name was a revered teacher from a distant mountain temple, a friend of the masters since their own youth as novices. Master Jin was walking slowly, deliberately, along the cloistered walkway bordering the courtyard. His polished walking stick, a sturdy length of dark, aged wood topped with a smooth, palm-worn knob, tapped rhythmically on the worn flagstones. Each step seemed measured, an act of profound attention. His gaze wasn't fixed on the distant mountains or the intricate carvings of the roof beams. It was downward, observing the path immediately before his feet, or occasionally lingering on the grain of the walking stick itself, his thumb absently tracing its contours. There was no frailty in his movement now, only a deep, settled presence. He moved like a mountain might move, if a mountain could walk slowly, inevitably, utterly grounded. The disciple paused, setting down his burden quietly, not wanting to disturb the old master's contemplation. He watched, struck by the quiet dignity, the absolute focus on the simple act of walking. Supported by the stick dot, as if sensing his presence, Master Jin paused near the disciple. He didn't startle. He simply turned his head, his eyes deep set, the color of twilight pools meeting the disciple's. A gentle smile touched his lips, softening the network of lines on his face. "Young friend," Master Jin's voice was surprisingly clear, a soft rasp like dry leaves, yet resonant. "The path is swept clean today. Good." "Yes, venerable Master Jin," the disciple bowed. "After the leaves fall, it needs attention." "Master." Jin nodded slowly, his gaze drifting back to the walking stick in his hand. He lifted it slightly, not as a burden, but as one might hold a treasured object. The morning sun caught the deep polish of the wood, highlighting years of use. "This path," he murmured, more to himself than the disciple. "It remembers every step, every footfall, light or heavy, joyful or weary." His thumb stroked the worn knob again. "Just as this remembers every hand." The disciple remained silent, sensing a story hovering in the cool air. Master Jin's eyes held a faraway look, yet they were deeply present. He leaned a little more weight onto the stick, testing its solidity against the stone. "Many winters ago," Master Jin began, his voice low and rhythmic, like the stick's tap on the stone. "Long before these knees grew stiff, and this back bent like an old willow, I was journeying. A foolish journey, perhaps. Young men are often foolish." A faint, self-deprecating smile flickered. "I sought a hermit," they said, "who lived beyond the black peaks. A master of of something I thought I needed to know." He chuckled softly. "What it was, I forget now. The seeking was the point then." He shifted his gaze back to the disciple, the twilight eyes sharpening. The path was unforgiving. Ice hidden under new snow. Loose scree that slid like sand. Beneath your feet. Wind that stole your breath and tried to steal your balance too. He paused, remembering. Near the highest pass, on a ledge narrower than a monk's sleeping mat, my foot slipped. The disciple held his breath, picturing the vertiginous drop. Not a fall, Master Jin clarified, his voice steady, but a lurch, a desperate scramble. My pack shifted, throwing me off balance completely. I flung out my hands and found only air. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. Time stretches thin in such moments. I saw the rocks far below. I felt the wind tugging. And then he opened his eyes, looking directly at the walking stick. Then a hand closed around my wrist, an iron grip. It hauled me back, stumbling onto solid rock. I collapsed, gasping, my heart trying to leap from my chest. He fell silent, the memory vivid in the stillness of the courtyard. The disciple could almost feel the icy wind, the terrifying lurch, the desperate grip. When my vision cleared, Master Jin continued, his voice softer now, I saw him, an old woodsman, bundled in furs, his face as creased and weathered as the mountains themselves. He carried an axe, and this. He tapped the walking stick lightly on the flagstone. It was rough then. Just a sturdy branch he'd picked up, he said, for the steep bits. Master Jin's expression softened into profound warmth. He didn't say much, asked if I was cracked or just careless, gave me a swig of bitter herb liquor that burned like fire all the way down. Then, seeing my shaking legs, he simply handed me this stick. Use it, boy, he grunted. The mountain respects prudence more than pride. The disciple looked at the polished stick with new reverence. It wasn't just wood. It was a lifeline, a gift born of compassion and gruff wisdom. I used it, Master Jin said, his voice thick with emotion. All the way up that pass and all the way down the other side. It found firm ground where my eyes saw only treachery. It bore my weight when my legs trembled. It was an anchor, a kindness offered without fanfare, without expectation. He paused, his gaze distant again, seeing the snowy pass, the gruff woodsman. I found the hermit's cave. Spent 3 days listening to the wind howl and the old man saying nothing much at all. Wisdom, it seemed, was mostly silence and cold porridge that winter. He chuckled again, a dry, warm sound. When I descended, I looked for the woodsman, to return his stick, to thank him properly, but he was gone. No one in the valley knew him well. Just old Kuo, they said, came and went with the seasons. Master Jin sighed, a sound like wind through pines. I kept the stick, carved the knob, smooth over the years, polished it with use and with remembrance. He looked down at it, his thumb tracing the grain once more. Every time my hand closes around it, I feel that iron grip on my wrist. I smell the snow and the bitter herbs. I hear his gruff voice. The mountain respects prudence more than pride. He looked up at the disciple, his eyes clear and bright. This stick, young friend, it is not just wood. It is gratitude solidified. It is a debt I could never repay to old Kuo, made tangible. It is a reminder that a life was saved by a moment's kindness, offered to a foolish stranger on a lonely mountain. The disciple felt a lump form in his throat. The simplicity, the depth of the old master's gratitude, spanning decades, was humbling. The disciple ventured softly. You never saw him again? To thank him? Master Jin smiled, a serene, knowing curve of his lips. Oh, I thanked him, every day, by using the gift he gave, by letting it support me, guide me, by remembering. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, yet filled with immense weight. Gratitude, true gratitude, doesn't vanish when the giver is gone. It echoes, it ripples. It asks only one thing, to be passed on. He straightened, tapping the stick firmly on the stone. This stick supported old Kuo. Then it supported a reckless young monk on a mountain pass. Now it supports an old man walking a sunlit courtyard. He met the disciple's eyes. The kindness wasn't trapped in that moment on the ledge. It flowed through the stick, through time. By using it, remembering him, honoring the gift, that is how the kindness lives. That is how the debt is paid, not by returning to the past, but by carrying the gift forward into the present. He paused, letting the words resonate in the crisp air. "When I am gone," he said, his voice utterly matter-of-fact, "this stick will not gather dust in a corner. It will find another hand. Perhaps an old hand needing support, perhaps a young hand starting a journey. And the kindness of old Kuo, the steadiness he offered, it will flow again. It will echo." Master Jin's gaze held the disciples, deep and unwavering. "Look around you, young friend. Every kindness you have ever received, a word, a gesture, a shared light in the dark, a silent cup of tea, they are not gone. They are echoes. They are sticks passed from hand to hand through time. Your task is not to cling to the giver, nor to fret over repayment you cannot make. Your task is to feel the gratitude, to honor it by letting that kindness flow through you, to become the next hand that offers the stick, the light, the steadying presence, to pass the echo on." He smiled then, a smile that held the warmth of countless suns and the quiet acceptance of passing time. That is how gratitude becomes a current, not a stagnant pool. That is how a single act on a snowy ledge becomes a river of kindness, flowing, long after the names of the givers are forgotten by the world. Master Jin gave the stick one final, affectionate tap on the flagstone. "Now," he said, his tone shifting to gentle practicality, "I believe the midday meal bell is about to sound. And an old man's legs appreciate predictability almost as much as a sturdy stick." He winked, a surprising spark of youthful mischief in his ancient eyes. The disciple bowed deeply, profoundly moved. "Thank you, Venerable Master Jin, for the story, for the stick." Master Jin chuckled, the sound like pebbles tumbling in a stream. "Thank old Kuo," he said softly. Then, leaning on the polished wood that bore the weight of decades and a debt of life, he turned and continued his slow, deliberate walk along the cloister, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap echoing softly in the quiet courtyard, a living testament to Fo. Gratitude's enduring echo. The disciple stood for a long moment, watching the old master's retreating back. He looked down at his own hands, empty now. He thought of the countless kindnesses that had steadied him, the master's calm after the shattered cup, the traveler's words on the moonlit rock, Shun's presence in the dark, the silent understanding. In the tea room, even Brother Liang's steadfast slowness, Brother Wen's sharpness that had shown him his own reflection. They were all echoes. They were all sticks passed into his hand. He hadn't been expected to return the master's teacup unbroken, nor to find the moonlit traveler to repay his wisdom. He hadn't been asked to balance the scales with Chun or the silent tea master. The debt of kindness wasn't a burden to repay. It was a current to join. It was an invitation to become part of the echo. He felt the smooth pebble from Zhao Lan in his pocket. A tiny moonstone, a fragment of joy offered freely. He thought of the walking stick-rough wood, transformed by gratitude and time into a polished support. Kindness, he realized, was like that. It might enter your life rough-hewn, unexpected, even gruff, but held in the hand of gratitude, used, remembered, passed on, it was polished. It became stronger, more beautiful, more resonant with each life it touched. A profound sense of responsibility washed over him. Not heavy, but light, like being entrusted with a precious flame to protect and pass on. He wasn't just the recipient of kindness. He was a link in a chain stretching back to unknown woodsmen on snowy passes, to countless hands offering unseen supports through time. His life was woven from these echoes. The midday bell began to toll, its deep, resonant notes, vibrating through the stone, through the air, through his very bones. It wasn't just a call to rice and vegetables. It felt like a call to remembrance, to gratitude, to the conscious passing on of the echo. He picked up his bundle of cushions again. As he walked towards the refectory, his steps felt different, lighter, yet more grounded. He walked not just on stone, but on the path worn smooth by gratitude. He carried not just cushions, but the invisible, weightless burden of grace, a burden that didn't weigh down, but lifted. He carried the echo. He knew what he must do. Not grand gestures, but small, steady offerings. A patient word where irritation might arise. A shared lantern when he saw someone else fumbling in the dark. A silent cup of presence for a troubled heart. Honoring the sticks passed to him by passing the kindness on in whatever form the moment asked. Polishing the rough-hewn gifts he'd received through the simple act of using them for good. The tap-tap of Master Jin's walking stick faded into the distance, blending with the bell's final vibrations. But the echo remained. It resonated in the disciple's chest, a quiet, steady pulse of understanding. Gratitude wasn't a debt to repay. It was a song to sing, a light to hold high, a sturdy stick to offer to the next trembling hand on the path. And in that offering, the kindness of old Kuo, the wisdom of the traveler, the calm of the master, the light shared with Chun, it all lived. It all flowed onward. The echo never truly faded. It simply found new voices, new hands, new hearts to resonate within, forever weaving the tapestry of connection that held the world together, one offered kindness at a time. The crisp air tasted, clean, sharp with the promise of frost. The disciple walked on, his heart echoing the bell, the stick, the mountain wind, and the silent, enduring song of thanks. The tap, tap, tap of Master Jin's walking stick, echoing gratitude through sunlit cloisters, fades into a deeper, more enveloping silence. Winter has settled gently over the monastery, not with fury, but with a hushed embrace. The air holds a crystalline stillness, sharp and clean, carrying the faint, sweet scent of dried chrysanthemum heads left on stems and the distant, comforting aroma of pine logs burning slowly in the hearth. Snow blankets the courtyard, transforming it into a pristine field of soft white, muffling all sound except the occasional soft thump as snow slides from a laden pine bough. Inside, the warmth of the meditation hall is a gentle cocoon. The light filtering through paper screens is pale and diffused, casting soft, elongated shadows. You feel this stillness within your own being, a profound quietude, a sense of journey nearing a harbor. The disciple's understanding of gratitude as a living echo, a current to join, resonates in this peaceful space. Now, let us return to the very beginning, to the heart of the master's quarters, where the scent of aged paper and sandalwood lingers, and where a small, unexpected object rests on a low table, bathed in the soft winter light. Months had passed since Master Jin's visit. Winter's grip was firm, turning the world outside into a monochrome study in white and gray. The disciple moved through his duties with a newfound steadiness, the lessons of the river, the leaf, the mirror, the garden, the shared lantern, the silent tea, and the walking stick woven into the fabric of his awareness. He no longer sought dramatic revelations. He found depth in the quiet rhythm of tending the hearth, sweeping snow from the paths, sitting in meditation as his breath misted in the cold air. He practiced passing on the echo a patient word, an extra blanket offered to an elderly monk. Feeling the chill, a moment of genuine listening. One particularly still afternoon, the master summoned him. Not to the tea room, but to his private study, a small room lined with scrolls and smelling of ink and ancient wisdom. The disciple entered, bowing, expecting perhaps a question about his meditation or a task. The master sat at his low writing desk. Before him, resting on a square of deep indigo silk, was an object that made the disciple's breath catch. It was the teacup. Not the shattered remnants, not the heartbreaking shards he had swept away with trembling hands that long ago rainy afternoon. It was whole, but not as it had been. The familiar, humble shape was there, the curve of the bowl, the slight flare of the rim. The warm, earthy tone of the clay was still visible, but running through it, like luminous veins of captured sunlight, were intricate lines of pure gold. They traced the paths of the breaks, the fissures where the cup had shattered. The largest fragment, the one bearing the natural kill flaw that had become a defining feature, was now edged and connected by this radiant gold. The gold didn't hide the breaks, it highlighted them. It embraced the history of fracture, transforming it into the cup's most striking, most beautiful aspect. It was no longer broken. It was something entirely new, something forged from its own breaking. Kintsugi, golden repair. The disciple stood frozen, staring. A wave of complex emotions washed over him. Recognition, disbelief, a profound ache for the past, and a dawning sense of awe. The fragile, shattered vessel he had destroyed in a moment of clumsy fear now sat before him, radiant, solid, utterly transformed. Its scars were not concealed. They were illuminated, made precious. The master watched him, his expression unreadable, yet suffused with a deep calm. He didn't speak immediately, allowing the disciple to absorb the sight, to feel the resonance of this object that held so much history, his own failure, the master's profound lesson on inevitable encounters, the presence of the visiting monk. Master, the disciple finally whispered, his voice thick. It is whole? It is repaired, the master corrected gently, his voice soft as falling snow. It is made anew through its breaking. He reached out a finger, not touching the cup, but tracing the air above one of the golden seams. See how the gold binds the fragments? It does not erase the break, it honors it. It acknowledges the history. The cup's story is written in these golden rivers. He lifted his gaze to meet the disciple's eyes. Do you remember what I told you when it shattered? There are no accidents, only inevitable encounters. Its breaking was its purpose for that moment. The disciple nodded, the memory vivid, the rain, his terror, the master's calm, the visiting monk's serene smile. Yes, master, I remember. This, the master gestured to the luminous cup, is the continuation of that purpose. The brokenness was not the end. It was the necessary prelude to this. He paused, letting the weight of the statement settle. The artisan who repaired it understood. He did not seek to disguise the damage. He sought to reveal its beauty, its truth. The gold is not merely adhesive. It is celebration. Snow continues to fall, silent and gentle, wrapping the world in a soft, white embrace. Each flake, a tiny, unique pattern, joining the endless blanket just as every moment, every encounter, every fracture and golden seam of your own journey has joined to create the intricate, unrepeatable pattern of your being. Feel the deep quiet now, not as absence, but as presence, the presence of wholeness. The heart's warmth is the warmth within you, the steady glow of awareness that holds all your experiences, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, like the gold holds the clay. The river of stories flows into a wide, calm sea. The lantern's flame merges with the dawn. The walking stick finds firm ground. The teacup rests, luminous and complete. Your breath is the only sound, a gentle tide on the shore of this deep peace. Let the golden seams within you, the marks of your resilience, your learning, your love glow softly in the stillness. They are not flaws. They are the map of your becoming, the signature of your unique, irreplaceable light. There is nowhere to go, nothing to grasp, no break to fear. Only this perfect, silent, golden wholeness. Rest here, cradled, complete. The snow falls, the world sleeps. And you are already home,